Hello, everyone. If you want to skip right to the interview, go to about 7 minutos. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 40 of the VonDubCast. That went so fast, I can't even believe it. I almost doesn't feel real that there's been 40 episodes. I almost had to, scroll back through the episodes just to remind myself of all of them. Because that happened so much faster. It seems like I just started it yesterday, but it all is thanks to you guys, the people that listen to this. You're the reason I keep doing it. I love all the messages I get of certain episodes, where they resonate with you, the things you enjoyed, the things that I really like, the constructive criticism. That's been a really fun experience, and it's been, like I've said before, I'm trying not to concentrate on the numbers and the growth as much. It's hard not to, but just focusing on making each and every episode really special to me and that I've enjoyed them. Some of the big accomplishment this year, people like the Colen brothers, authors that I really thought it would be, a couple years into this process that I'd get to interview them. Because selfishly, a big part of this podcast was to probably, if I'm honest with myself, was a big part of it is to be able to talk to those people that I really look up to, authors, comedians, musicians, those type of people, scientists, and it's so cool to see, you take those swings all the time and you you get a lot of no's in this business, and then to have a couple breakthrough like that was super exciting to have that already. Really excited. It gives me a lot of motivation to maybe take a couple more big swings at it, and that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you guys for, keeping me honest and keeping me motivated to keep on doing this. Really fun episode today. Scotty is the department head of the transportation department for NAIT, Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. It's a trade school in Edmonton. Its sister school is SAIT down in Calgary. And NAIT was always kind of special in our household. My mom went to the University of Alberta and my dad went to NAIT. So it was always growing up, it was always kind of a battle between the two. Ingo would always say, NAIT is the way to go. NAIT's the best school. And Dan would say U of A. So it's fun. I've had lots of U of A people on this podcast. This is my first NAIT one. And I think trade schools are amazing. And I think what they can be is amazing too. And I think that's something we talk about a lot on this podcast, is just kind of my ideas of where I have lots of ideas for post-secondary education on the university side and the trade school side, and just kind of where everything needs to go. And I mean, what do I know? But I took a swing at a couple of the ideas there, and it was really fun to discuss. And it was really cool to get Scotty's take on, where he sees post-secondary education going, and where he sees these industries that he's so close to going in the future, and just some of the big changes he's seen already. I know this COVID pandemic is making some of these changes happen a little more quickly than probably a lot of people would have thought, but it's awesome to see the innovation and people, not cowering in their homes, and let's figure this out. Let's come up with some ideas. We might have to split it 50-50 between in class and online, and take advantage of all these new technologies. And I love that. I love human ingenuity and just where we can take things if we don't give up to the fear or give in to the fear. I know there's a lot of fear going around, and that's something that I've been very upset about throughout this whole thing. I think there's a healthy time for fear, but I think there's been enough of it, and I think people use it to monetize it. I think they use it for clicks and to keep people from turning off their TVs and just leaving the news on. And I'm beating a dead horse on that for anybody that's listened to maybe more than one or two episodes, but it's just what I feel. But it's awesome to when you get down on stuff like that, talking to someone like Scotty that has all this fire and excitement to keep moving forward, it really shows you that if you're thinking like that and you're trying to work through it, and just seems like everybody's down and negative and wants everything to shut down and all that stuff, there's other people out there that don't think that way. And if you are feeling a little bit lonely, the people are out there. They may not be as loud, they may not have as big of platforms to throw out that kind of counter programming, but you got to look for it where you can find it, because the people are out there. And I think it's a lot more people than you'd think are thinking that way. So this was a super fun episode to record. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know you guys will enjoy it, because there's lots of really interesting stuff. I think a lot of the hometown guys, maybe a little more I think some of these conversations I've been told are maybe a little bit too intellectual for people, a little bit too many big words. And this is just a good two guys having a good bullshit and talking about some really fun stuff. And yeah, So if you guys could do that, like all the time, if you guys could help follow me on social media, my Instagram, and then also my Twitter. It's still stuck at 13 followers. It's been at 13 followers for probably months now. Really in the new year, I want to make my Twitter account something that's useful to people and make it a really good follow. And if I can get some people to, maybe if I can crack that 15 followers, I'm going to try and, make sure I'm putting something on there every day and make sure it's a really good follow. And I retweet some really cool stuff. It's kind of where I'm more active almost on retweeting that stuff than I am on Instagram sometimes, just because of how much easier it is to use just a retweet button and shit versus me stumbling around with my fat fingers trying to make stories and stuff on Instagram. I think you guys would laugh your asses off if you could see me trying to navigate social media. I'm so bad at it and it's so not up my alley, but I try my best and I try and make it useful because it's an important tool for getting people on. When you ask a big guest, the first thing they look at is how many followers you have, unfortunately. And so I do need to do it, and I try to make sure that if you guys are gonna, give me your attention by giving me a follow, that I make it worth your guys' while and make it interesting for you. So I've been working really hard on that, and I think in the new year I'm going to try even harder to make sure I'm always on there and making sure it's useful to you guys. So that's a big help. Again, word of mouth is huge for the podcast success. If this episode, I think this episode, everybody that listens to it probably knows one or two people that it would be a great fit for. If you could, everyone passes this on to one person, who knows where it can go. And the more people that start to listen, the more of the next steps I can take. And I have, huge plans. I know I say that every fucking intro, but I have big plans for it. And it all just kind of goes with how much the podcast grows. So if I get a little bit more of a boost, then I can take it to the next step. It's going to get better, and you guys are going to get better content out of it, and new ideas and spin-offs and that sort of thing. So yeah, if you could help me out on that, that's awesome. And other than that, I hope you guys had a nice little holiday, Christmas, and a happy New Year. And I'll see you guys in the outro. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for being here, Scotty. One of the people I reached out to a long time ago, and it took us a little bit of time to make it happen, but here we are, and this is one I'm really excited about.
Me too. Can't wait.
Awesome. Well, just to maybe kick things off, because I think a lot of the questions I have revolve kind of around what you do for work, and maybe just for the people listening so that they have a little bit of background, maybe you could explain what you do for a living just right off the bat.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm a department head at NAIT. So I look after the transportation program. So right. Auto body, automotives, heavy equipment, parts, and outdoor power equipment are all programs within my portfolio.
Awesome. And you've probably seen a lot of change with this. How long have you been doing that, Scott?
15 years I've been at
15
NAIT.
years, hey?
15 years, yeah.
Wow. So what would you say some of the biggest changes you've seen come through those industries in those 15 years?
Well, honestly, by far, the biggest change we've seen is thanks to COVID. We had, trades historically are a in-person delivery system. So you get your theory on in a classroom, and then you walk into the shops and labs and do the hands-on components. And thanks to COVID, we had to change the way we've delivered it. So, NAIT started doing trades training in 1962.
Wow.
And it's been face-to-face. And other than curriculum changes, it's been identical format ever since.
Yeah.
And then COVID came along, and we really brought our entire team together, the whole School of Skilled Trades, and we had to look at things and say, what can we do differently? Because we can't just stop training. The world doesn't stop because of a pandemic. We have to figure out a way around it. So that was a very large wholesale change for NAIT and all the trades in general, where we had to, we're now doing what's called a blended format. So we're delivering the theory portion from home. So instructors, we set them up with mobile devices. They're delivering all of their training from home, and then they come in just for very specific timed labs. And as soon as they're done, they're out of the building.
Right. So
that's been a huge change.
So what kind of mix would you say it is of in-person versus online now?
Historically it was a 50-50 mix of theory and shop components, and that would be across all trades. They do vary a little bit. Now it's probably about an 80-20.
Yeah.
So a lot of front-loaded theory. Interesting enough, I was just talking to one of my instructors today. One of our students that is there thanks to this new method, he's in Zimbabwe.
Oh, wow.
So he's taking his heavy equipment training, and he's in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
Logs on, does his exam, and kind of shared some background shots of where he is. I mean, it takes him 45 minutes to get on the internet there.
Holy shit.
So it's very different than what you and I live, right?
Yeah, no shit. Makes you
very
thankful
cool
for what you got, hey?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
But that's so cool that what that opens the door to. It's not a fun way to go about it, and the disruption that it takes. It's not the funnest way to have it roll out. But the disruption, whether good or bad, the way you roll with it, you can make it good, right? Even if it starts bad,
absolutely.
you can take advantage of it. And that's what everybody's trying to do
Yeah,
across the board. But I think post-secondary education is one of those ones where it's probably never going to look the same, whether you look at trades or universities or
no,
colleges. It's probably going to be a lot different forever.
I
And
think it is. Yeah, I mean, we came into this, in March. Honestly, we had a meeting March 15th, which was a Sunday,
Mhm.
which was we've never had a weekend meeting at work. So we had
Yeah.
this meeting talking about what do we do if, and we kind of
Mhm.
sat there in disbelief, thinking there's no way this can work.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, all of our instructional staff built this online curriculum. And you got to remember, for them, these are folks that are used to doing hands-on trades. They're used to face-to-face. They can have a good conversation, but the technology is not always available depending on where
Mhm.
they live
Yeah.
and their skill set sitting in front of a camera like what
Mhm.
you and I are doing right now. So it was
Yeah.
quite a game changer for everybody. But I'm happy to report right out of the gate, the classes were full. We had wait lists right out
Oh
of day
yeah.
one,
Oh, that's awesome.
and
That's great
still
to
do.
hear. That's awesome.
Yeah,
And that's something that I hadn't really even thought about too, because, well, I guess I thought about it a little bit, maybe not to this degree. Just the way you put it kind of made me think of it of these professors that have probably been teaching this the same way for many, many years, and they've built up that skill of how they teach. And then now they have to,
absolutely.
it's not like through any fault of their own. Now they have to relearn a whole new way of teaching. Right. And they may have
Absolutely.
a lot of that knowledge, but it's just a new skill set, right? It's
Yep.
being in front of a computer. You lose that, you don't get to have that feel of the classroom to know, when you got to take a minute to grab everyone's attention again and get them locked back in. And you need to start looking
Yeah.
out for new signs of when you're losing them and that sort of thing. So I bet you it's going to
Yeah.
take a little bit for teachers to figure that back out.
Absolutely. It is definitely a steep learning curve. And
Yeah.
if you've been on we're using a Teams, Microsoft Teams platform.
Mhm.
So the interesting thing with Teams is you can be on a call, close your camera. We don't know if you're actually even in the room.
Exactly.
You might be off doing laundry somewhere
Oh,
and we're trying to teach a class. You have no
yeah.
idea.
And
Right?
it kind of puts the onus a lot onto the students, right? To really, if they
Very
want to
heavily.
learn,
Yeah.
which was something that through my university career, the more times they put the onus onto the student, the more I fucked off and was not in class, right? Like if there was any
Right?
opportunity, there was
Yep.
classes where there was 10% attendance marks and I still wouldn't go. I was just like, oh, well, I got to do 10% better to pass this class. Cause I know I'm not going to go for the attendance. If I can get 2 or 3% on that, I know I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Don't tell Lingo that, but
I will. It'll be our little secret.
yeah,
Don't worry.
yeah. It's not like he listens to these religiously.
No,
Hey? Oh man.
not at all.
But it's funny just to see all these new battles you didn't think you'd be fighting, right? And now it's just,
Yeah.
but that's life. You got to take whatever's given to you. If life gives you lemons, you fucking eat some lemons, right?
Pretty much.
I think that's a saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Oh, that's funny. So I know that's kind of the transportation is your baby. That's your area. But kind of overall too, have you seen any other trades, any other areas at NAIT that have had even more changes besides kind of what we talked about? Is there any ones that even with the increasing the split of the theory over the in-person lab work that they have had bigger changes than that? Like I'm like a couple things that come to mind is kind of like the culinary section and stuff like that is a lot. I don't know how much theory you can do in that. I mean, to learn to cook, you kind of got to cook, right? And other things like that.
You do. So it's interesting actually. The culinary program is part of our school as well. So we're well in tune with them, and by far they were the ones that were ready for COVID long before any of us.
Oh, really?
A lot of their which surprised me too. I had that.
Well, I guess
same
everyone has a
mindset as
kitchen
you.
at home now that I think about
They've
it.
all got a kitchen, so they got to the point they were sending out the ingredients to the students, and they would have the instructors would come on the screen, walk you through the demo, and give you time to do it, and it's actually worked quite well. The interesting thing about NAIT is if you've ever been through the culinary labs, is they actually have videos in all of their kitchens already. So the cameras are mounted above their tables. So then you have a large class, 24 students away at the back can still see exactly what that chef is doing at that table. So if they're dicing onions or whatever, it looks like you're standing right there. So they were already ready for this, and it's very professional, high-end equipment they have.
Oh, wow.
So they were by far ready for it.
That is so cool. I didn't even know that. It's funny
it's very cool.
the one example I picked to be on the one side, I kind of proved the opposite point of what I was trying.
It's that one, they were so ready for that. It was amazing. And actually, NAIT is doing a virtual cooking series right now, and I've taken part in that twice now, where they give you a package. You sign up for it. They give you the package, and the executive chef. There's a 5-star restaurant at NAIT called Ernest's.
Yeah.
There's an executive chef that runs that restaurant, and he actually comes on the screen, logs onto you. It's a 3-hour call that he commits to, and he walks you through everything. So some of the meal
cool.
is already prepped for you. So the hard stuff that takes a long time and a lot of effort, he does some of that, and the rest of it, you assemble this whole meal together. They are phenomenal. So it's super cool. You're cooking with an executive chef. You're learning those tips and tricks that it's like everything. You got to be in the industry to figure it out, right?
Yeah, and that was something that I didn't realize that NAIT had that. When I think it was you were over my parents' place maybe a year or so ago, and we're just bullshitting. You told us about that, and all three of us were like, really? Like, I didn't know that was even there. That's kind of one of those best kept secrets in Edmonton. Can anybody go to that? Is it just a big wait list?
It's open to the public. Yeah, you can make the reservations anywhere, and it is true 5-star dining. It's phenomenal. And I'll be honest with you, before I started at NAIT, I had no idea about it either.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, it's phenomenal food. And the cool thing there is if you go there during the weekdays, it's actually manned by students.
Oh, yeah.
So the instructional staff oversee everything. So the chefs are in the kitchen with their students. And in the dining room area is the maitre d's that are training. A lot of them are training to go work on cruise ships and work in high-end restaurants. Yeah. So the instructional staff has already taught them a lot of stuff on how you serve, how you take orders, get feedback, do all that stuff. So they're actually going through the whole thing. And when the meal is done, the whole team, the student chefs and the maitre d's and everybody comes over to your table and asks you to critique them.
Oh, cool.
They ask for fresh feedback, like, what did you like? What didn't you like? Any suggestions on what we could do better? Awesome. It's phenomenal. So, yeah.
So then is that two separate programs? Like if you're learning to do the maitre d' stuff versus like the chef teaching? Okay,
it is.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. One is hospitality management and the other one is actual, it's chef or cook.
Right. Because that's what I was thinking. I was thinking I could make a good argument for both me, because I think that would also be good for the chefs to kind of learn that side too and know that high end. I feel like oftentimes to have a better understanding, like, you could spend an hour learning a new cooking method, but I think at a certain point you plateau at how many more skills you can add. And sometimes just stepping outside that and finding a new area of the kitchen, or a new part of the restaurant to learn it just ups your total knowledge of how everything works. Right. And I think that's always something that I learned growing up in the business with my dad, like learning to work in the C-store helped me understand when I went into the shop, because you just know about the industry. And then working in the shop helped me when I went into the office and I started working in the office because I had that knowledge. And just all these other areas, they may not directly correlate, but just having that better, well-rounded understanding of what your industry is, it really helps. I wonder if there's any other areas that you could do that. If you're working in a heavy duty, it'd be cool to have or maybe this is part. I guess I should make this as a question, but is there any parts that kind of teach a guy how to run a shop if you're doing like a heavy duty mechanics? Does it show any of that side, like the business side of it?
You know what's interesting in the trades? There another best kept secret you were alluding to a few minutes ago. There's something out there called the Blue Seal. So technicians get their journeyman status, and then Red Seal is interprovincial status, so you can work anywhere across Canada. Blue Seal is the management side of that.
Blue Seal.
Again, often the best kept secret that's out there, because that is truly the management and business side of it. Part of all of our curriculum in the fourth period or their final period of training, part of that is teaching those apprentices. Not really the business end of things specifically, but the mentorship piece. So if I'm becoming a journeyman, how do I bring the next round of apprentices up to speed in the shop? So really just teaching people how to be open-minded, I guess, and working with others, right? But the Blue Seal is truly where it's at. The Blue Seal is it's totally separate accreditation. So a lot of people have their blue and their red seal, and it takes a little bit of time to get, but they're all business competency courses that you're taking.
Wow, that is so cool. I had no idea. And is that blue seal offered on all the trades, or is that just a certain specific you have it?
Yep. No, it is all across the board.
I can't believe living in Alberta this long, I've never heard of a blue seal before. Oh man, it's funny. It's funny.
Again, till I came to NAIT and started working there, I had no idea.
Yeah. Oh man.
No idea. Yeah.
And I was just thinking how important that mentorship piece is, because me and you have both been around shops a long time, and you can see the difference when you have a shop foreman or a head mechanic that is a good mentor and, is good with his guys, how much that attitude in that shop is different and how much productivity is different in that shop. Yep. It's night and day. The guy I have right now that's running my shop is just, always in a good mood, always good to help, is very, his mentorship skills are very high. And it is such a different environment in there from the day he started, and you can, it pays dividends. And that's just one example of it, but you see that all over the place, right? You could use that as a microcosm for, any industry you wanted to put, you could find that and find the equivalency, right? Oh, that's an awesome idea. Man,
and one of the drawbacks with that, even that mentorship piece, not all trades do it, but some of them, auto body, for example, that's my background. So I'm very familiar with that one.
Right.
You're either working hourly or you're working flat rate. So if I'm working flat rate and I'm getting paid by the job, a lot of techs, unfortunately, won't spend that time with their apprentices. They're saying, you know what,
you're taking money out of your own pocket. Exactly.
And it really is. So a lot of shops have had to combat that by offering a bit of a buffer, saying, hey, you know what, if you take little Johnny under your wing for a few hours today, we'll pay you a few extra hours. And they do what they got to do, right? But unfortunately, that got very cutthroat for many years, where it actually produced a shortage in the industry. There was not enough people coming through the trade, because they'd say, you know what, I went to a shop and all I'm doing is sweeping floors and really doing nothing trade related. I'm a laborer, right?
Yeah, and it's tough too, because sometimes it's not even the payment structure. Sometimes it's just the business you're in, and sometimes you get busy and it's just too hard. Because I remember when I first started in the shop, I started in the middle of January in our busiest season, and there was, my first job, it was -40, and we had to rerun a heat trace line in this puddle of water out in -40 with wet gloves and stuff. And that was my first introduction to working in the shop. And it was that, washing trucks, pushing broom, right? And not that I really escalated much past that, because I was such a terrible mechanic. I was really good up here. I was good, but these, terrible. I was always so scared to break shit, because I was, growing up with Ingo, if you broke something, you're in big trouble. So I was always just terrified. But as a heavy duty mechanic, you can't be scared to break shit, because I'd be so sure that I was doing something wrong, because this thing just wouldn't go. And then, Roger, can you come help me? He comes over, gives it a fucking boot, and it pops off. I'm like, oh shit, well, I could have done that, but I was so worried to snap it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty common.
Yeah, that was, and I'm sure if I would have stayed in it longer and kept doing it, I would have kind of got away from that. And I think that probably is just the first couple of years, but that was definitely my biggest holdback, and that kept me doing the things that I knew. I was good at. I was good at services. I was good at taking apart black mirror pumps and changing out those interior seals. That was my best job. That and then always those stupid, what are those Victaulic couplers or whatever on the piping. I hated that job, but it was an easy thing to do, and I didn't have much skill. So that was always, it's a Vic coupler. Nick, good under there, go change it.
Yours.
It resulted in some good diesel bass a couple times.
Right? I bet it did. Yeah.
But the boys in the shop, they said, well, you're not a real mechanic until you get your first bass. So, I mean, I guess that's part of the,
it's part of the it is. Yeah.
Is that part of the curriculum in NAIT to give everyone the first bath, or is that just an extra?
No, do we tell you it's probably going to happen, but we encourage you to not let it happen. Eh? Gone are the days. You look back, even not that many years ago, even in the automotive side, people used to siphon gas just with a garden hose. Yeah. So if you had to change a fuel pump in a car and drop a fuel tank, I worked in shops as well myself, where you literally had an old piece of airline. And you started huffing on that thing, and you're probably going to get a mouthful of gas, but you had no option. Like, it's crazy.
That's what you had to do.
That's what you had to do, and there was no difference, right? And also back in that day too. That's when you used to walk into a paint booth, and the painter always had a smoke in his mouth.
Yeah, no shit, hey.
I'm not kidding you. There was no PPE in the auto body world. It was crazy, and I remember getting into that trade. And hearing the horror stories. I'm third generation auto body. My grandpa and my uncle were both in auto body.
Yeah.
So I grew up in this stuff, right? And I can remember, my grandpa sitting me down saying, you don't want to do this. Like, pick a different path, right? I know you like working on cars. I know this is neat, but find something better, right?
Really?
And I thought, no, this is crazy. I love doing this, right?
What are you talking about?
And now, again, you look at how much that's fast forwarded, even in the last, in the last 15 years. Night and day difference on what we're doing in the shops.
Exactly. And it's funny, sometimes you see these videos go around on Facebook where you see someone doing something crazy, like filling a fuel truck with a smoke hanging out of his mouth in all these countries around the world, and people go, look at these guys, idiots. And you're like, yeah, these idiots. And then you think back and you're like, oh, I've definitely seen people do that about 15 years ago, right? Like all the shit
right.
All like we've moved past this, but it's still happening. But then everyone's laughing and pointing fingers. Is like, oh, if you only knew that was happening in your own backyard about 10 to 15 years back, and if you go back 30 years, even more shit, and you'd probably be doing worse shit than that, right? Like,
probably, yeah. When you look at the TV shows that are out there, any of the car related ones that are out there, half the stuff they're doing, they don't want you all dressed up in PPE and doing things proper. They want it to look like you're just an average guy, and you're in there, you're hanging a great paint job on a car, and you're in your flip-flops and your Oakleys, and you're good to go. Like, it's crazy, right?
I know, hey? Sends
and unfortunately, that's part of the image. Yeah, it does. Sends a horrible image, right?
So that's kind of what you guys are battling. That's what you guys are up against with these young kids that have watched these shows,
Absolutely.
being a painter all your life, and they come in with their flip flops, right? No, get your suit on. You gotta, this is important.
Yeah. They literally come in and go, well, you want me to wear all this? Cause part of, like any trade, when you come into it, when you're brand new, you have no idea.
Yeah.
If you've never been in a paint booth before, you might envision exactly like what you just said, is somebody in flip flops and shorts and a t-shirt, and you got a spray gun, right? And I'll be honest, I've sprayed like that because I didn't know better back in the day, right? I used to do these things out of your parents' garage, and I had my own garage at home. I did work on the side, right? Like everybody does. And these people come in, and when you start outfitting them with all the gear, and then now you expect them to still be agile in the booth, it's tough.
Yeah,
it's really tough, right?
And it's hard when they learn, that they're so used to being in their flip flops and under their PPE, and they got their whole down, they have their rhythm down of how they spray. Because a lot of the times, I mean, I'm guessing, but it seems like from what I've heard Darby say about spraying, it's so important of just keeping the strokes even and making sure you're not over applying. When you got all this new shit on, you almost have to relearn how to paint with PPE. You do, right? I bet.
Yeah, you do. Yep. So one of the things we do with our classes, we have there's several trades that have an introductory class. It's called pre-employment. So these are the folks that have never been in any trade or that trade in particular, and we front load them with the theory. So they're on campus for 15 weeks. We give them all the theory. We bring them through the shop. So by the time they actually do their practicum at a shop, they have some pretty good skill,
right? And
they're not a liability anymore. They're now an asset in that shop, right? One of the things we do with them is we have a very cool tool called a sim spray. So it's literally a virtual sprayer. So it actually is a spray gun body. So it's got the feel of an actual spray gun. It's got the sound. We have surround sound set up in there with it, and a large screen they spray on. And they're 3D objects. So you do wear a headset.
Yeah.
And we can pick anything from a fender, a door, whatever, you name it, what you want to paint. And it is there. So you have to follow the contour of that panel.
Yeah.
And then we outfit them in that PPE, so they get used to that feel of wearing, headgear, and an arrow's coming out the back of that, and even just the Tyvek coveralls that we give to the students. Yeah, it just feels different, right? So we get them used to that, and then we put them in the paint booth. We have a huge amount of success with that.
That is awesome. So
that was a quick return on investment buying those.
I bet. So that and that was called the pre-employment training. Is that what you called it?
Auto body pre-employment. Yeah.
So do they have that pre-employment? Because that's something that, now that you say it, that's probably a huge thing. I would imagine lots of people, maybe you want to do heavy duty, you seem interested, but you've never had a chance. That'd be quite intimidating to try and go in there, never pulling a wrench in your life and trying to go in and go into the school. So is that pre-employment offered in a lot of other areas?
A lot of, there's quite a few. There's, I don't know all of them that are out there for the trades. Right. I know heavy equipment has one. I know automotives has one. So between auto body, automotives, and heavy equipment, they are heavily subscribed to.
That is awesome.
So a lot of students come in. I mean, there's a natural selection process takes place in there as well. You get the students that come in, and sometimes within the first couple of weeks, you get the students say, "Yeah, this is nothing like what I imagined it was going to be," but now I know, right? And off they go, and and then you get other ones just they go through the whole gamut of it, and then they say, "You know what? This is not a career path for me, but it's pretty cool. I've got enough info to do things on my own now," right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I found of when I was doing heavy duty, just working as a summer gig and working in high school. And like I could kind of tell it wasn't for me, but I was just so happy with the skills I was learning because I wasn't very handy. I just wasn't a handy guy. And just you learn the names of tools, and you learn, it's just almost, it's funny to say anything is what it means to be a man, because that's, one of those cliche things of what it says, but in Alberta, that is definitely something that society tells you is, as a man, you're supposed to know all these tools, and you're supposed to know the names and know how to use them all. And I definitely did not have that. And it was kind of always a thing that I was always very insecure about. And I felt like just getting a couple months in that shop and learning that I'm still not a wizard. I'm not the handiest guy in the world, but at least I have I can fake it a little bit more now. And that gave me a lot more confidence. I think that's something that I wish that was more, ingrained in some other way, where it wasn't a choice that somebody had to go do that on their own, where that was kind of built in, right? It was almost like if you could put some sort of basic shop curriculum into, not in high school, but, earlier, getting kids that are in middle school and stuff, just getting them familiarized with tools and what they are and what their names are, and kind of a bit of safety too. It's probably, I bet you there's a lot of guys trying to change a tire on the side of the road and have no idea just the basic safety of using tools, right? Like, and even household tools, like people think, people don't realize the danger of like a dull tool or or cutting towards themselves, just those kind of basics that I was
simple things.
Absolutely. It's funny on that side. It'd be nice if you could find a way to pull that all in there. So earlier when I was trying to kind of the question I tried to ask, and I kind of swindled myself by giving the worst example possible with the culinary side that seemed most ready for it. What was some of the most challenging industries to kind of convert to the new COVID world?
Well, I'll speak to the ones that I'm familiar with.
For
So the
sure,
ones
yeah.
within my area. So auto body, for example. How do you teach every step of that on an
Yeah.
online platform? So, there's so many examples that I don't even know where to start with it. But if you look at even something as simple as talking about different grits of sandpaper, or how to mix
Right.
body filler,
Mm-hmm.
or how to remove a panel. I mean, it's tough to demo all this
Yeah.
stuff because we're not on campus.
Mm-hmm.
So at least on campus, I can talk to you about doing something, and then we can walk into that lab and I can demonstrate it.
Right.
So it locks in fairly quickly. Whereas when you're at home, we first started thinking, okay, we got to build a data bank of videos. What do we need to demonstrate? Well, when you start breaking that down, even just per period of training, there's 4 periods of auto body. There's thousands of videos,
Yeah.
just little segments, but still there's thousands of them that we have to do, right?
Yeah.
Mixing filler, or cleaning up, or the right PPE for the right job, how to use that tool properly. I mean, there's thousands of tools we use as well. So even just teaching that tool safety. So it's created some unique challenges in that way, for sure. But it's working. It's working well. We're still ongoing. We're still building all these videos. Probably the coolest tool we just purchased is a 3D scanner.
Oh, cool.
So we haven't produced any videos yet, but you will see this coming. It is very cool.
Hugely
so
useful.
We actually have some technicians within my area that are support staff. So they build and they fabricate training aids. So that is what they do full time, and they love it, and they're extremely good at what they do.
I bet.
So I have one, for example, came to me a couple years ago, and he said, I want to buy a 3D printer. I want to start producing training aids. So the example that he brought to me at that time is in automotives. They work on differentials. So if you've ever seen a differential out of a vehicle, it's big, it's bulky. So you times that by 24 students, that's a lot of real estate you're taking up in the shop. So he came in, he said, I want to build these, but a tabletop version. So they can see all the planetary gears, they can see everything working. And I thought, this is going to fail hard, but I'll support it, right?
Yeah.
We bought a 3D printer. He actually built me a prototype. He came in, plunked it on my desk, and went, what do you think? I got to tell you, I was blown away. I had no idea the technology that you could do in that. From there, it's turned into an entire shop. Like this person that I have, he's a machinist as well. So and we have a machine shop at NAIT. So he builds and fabricates all these pieces. We have multiple 3D printers running 24/7 now. So this 3D scanner we bought is pretty cool. So you can actually take any component on a vehicle. You can take a turbo. If you want to take a turbo apart, you can scan that turbo, and it almost looks like an iron.
Yeah.
You move it around the object, and it actually scans it right onto the screen for you. And then as you take it apart, it saves each piece of that and puts it into layers. And you can literally disassemble and reassemble things on the screen just with a click of a mouse. So that is our next big venture that we're going down. And we just got the scanner, so we're just working on those next steps. But that'll become part of our curriculum. So
that's awesome.
Back to the beginning of our call when we said, you're going to see this change how we're delivering training. This is definitely going to support that for many, many years to come.
Oh, that's so cool. Cause that's it's funny that you talk about that, because this is something that's come up a million times on the podcast. It's probably like the 6th or 7th time I've talked about this, but there's something, I listened to a podcast and it was very eye opening for me. They talked about, it was an AI podcast, and we're talking about how humans learn things. And there's 2 different ways you can learn things. You can learn things kind of in a vocabulary sense, where somebody explains something to you, and you can understand that to a certain degree, and it gives you a certain amount of knowledge. But then there's another layer when you experientially understand something, when you can get your hands on it, when you can repeat it back in a different way and prove your understanding of it. And I was saying, like, something like auto body, where so much of that is feel, like you talk about sanding and bonding and all that. It's a lot of building up that feel, and you need that experience. You can't explain to somebody the feel of that sort of thing. So that's so cool to find these workarounds, like these 3D models, that you can now bring that experiential knowledge to the people, right? And you can print off a model and send it to Zimbabwe, and somebody could learn how to take apart a diff. Like, that's fucking so cool.
It's crazy technology. Yeah, it's super cool. I'm super excited to play with it. But again, it doesn't replace everything in there. It just really arms you. So if you're sitting at home and you're wanting to take some of this training, and you say, hey, how do you spray a car? You can actually walk through that digitally and see what the what that feel is, what's the pattern, what's the process, how do I go around that vehicle? Do I start with the roof? Do I start with the rocker panel? A lot of questions that come up that, instinctually painters just know, right? They know where to go. They know how to go. They know the speed. But at least by giving them that online, it better prepares them. So when we do put you in the paint booth, at least you have a fighting chance of where you're going with it, right?
You got a bit of a base to work off of.
Yeah, and it makes a world of difference out there. So, but you're right. When it comes to auto body, it all comes down to feel. So you can't replicate that. Not that we've found anyhow. We've yet to find a way to replicate that on any form of digital media.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But the nice thing is that digital media and those new technology, they're rapidly increasing, right? You get blown away by, you don't check in with an industry for 6 months to a year, and then someone plots something on your desk and you didn't even know it's physically possible to do that. And that's happening all around us. We're so ignorant of all these evolutions, and then they just pop in front of you, and it's and you're a whole different ballgame. That's where some people, they get so caught up in trying to fix things in all these different ways, when, I think sometimes people just need to slow down and not get so concerned over it. And it's like, oh no, there's stuff coming where the human innovation. That's why I said, when all this COVID stuff started, I was saying this to people like goddamn Skittles. I was handing this little piece of knowledge out, just like, never underestimate human innovation. I've been very disappointed, and I kind of, almost want to walk that statement, just because I figured in that 8 months between the first wave and the second wave, we would have done a lot of things, set up stations for people to get, health info and what, your vitamin D and your zinc, and have those free handed out, and doing all these things, and, building extra triage centers and all this stuff. And we pretty much did nothing, and right back into it. It's like, I still believe in my point about the human innovation, but I think the rollout of it was completely boggled. I was like, oh man, that's kind of embarrassing, but I still really stand by that point, because you can see so many examples of it in other areers. It just seems like,
absolutely,
especially when government gets involved, that human innovation is so stifled by bureaucracy that it doesn't allow it to shine through.
Well, it's interesting when you look at that innovation. I mean, in my portfolio alone, the programs that I see the most growth in are the ones you're linked with as well. So, the heavy equipment, the auto body, the automotive side, that changes so rapidly that we literally can't keep up with our curriculum.
Yeah.
So Alberta Apprenticeship dictates our curriculum for us, and when it gets reviewed and renewed, that's typically on a 5 to 7 year cycle when it gets upgraded.
Wow.
So you take your vehicle, take a brand new 2020 whatever vehicle right now, 5 years from now, that technology that's on your vehicle is going to be vastly different. So it's incredibly tough to keep up with any of that technology, right?
I bet.
And when I started at NAIT, it was interesting. I started as an instructor in the auto body program, and it was quite mind blowing to me when I walked in there day one as an instructor. It was literally like when I came through there as a student. Yeah. It was mind blowing. We were still teaching brazing and oxyacetylene welding. And I remember looking at this. So the instructors I was working with were the long timers that taught me. Yeah. They were at NAIT 35 plus years. Awesome folks. Taught me everything I know today. But you kind of look at them and you go, really? We did this in the late 80s and early 90s, and you're still teaching this? Like, where did they use this? But it was that mindset of the trades are really driven by the institutes as well. And if the institutes just get complacent, and they don't have to dip into, you mentioned bureaucracy from the government. They don't want to spend money if they don't have to. So if nobody's complaining, they leave things as is.
Exactly.
So that curriculum didn't change for almost 15 years. It was nuts.
Wow. And with that process now, is there a lot of feedback on that comes from you guys? I mean, obviously they set the curriculum for you guys, but do you guys have their ear quite steadily to tell them what needs to be updated and what is on the thing? And also, do they listen if you even do have the ear?
Good question. So yes and no. So all apprenticeship is driven by what's called local area committees. So LACs are the groups that drive that. And then the PAC is the provincial apprenticeship committee that is province wide. Those are the ones that really drive and govern that, all of that curriculum. So when we go to those meetings, we're there as observers. So we can speak all we want, but they don't record any of our data that we offer. They just listen and go, "Hiya, thanks for that," but it's up to this group, right? So we're fortunate enough. All of those positions are volunteer positions. So if you get an LAC that, for whatever reason has, the trade hasn't really supported them, or they're in shops and they haven't been supported to attend these, that trade literally will go by the wayside for years until somebody comes in. So it was pretty cool when I started at NAIT. I started asking questions of my students saying, teaching them to be on an LAC and a PAC as part of that curriculum. I was asking them very pointed questions saying, are you on any of these? Why not?
Yeah.
And over time, those committees started to grow. Now they're very, very strong governing bodies. And essentially the apprenticeship board has to react to whatever they say they need. So if they come in and say, hey, we want, particular training on waterborne paint, that's driven by the group, and the apprenticeship board will support that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Whereas if Scott from NAIT calls them and says, hey, you know what, there's a new paint out, we need to get it, they go, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to spend money, right? I mean, and the more interesting part is, NAIT is government funded, apprenticeship is government funded. We're all pulling from the same pot of money.
Exactly.
We're really friends in this whole thing, but they teach it or they treat it like it's their own cash that they're playing with, right?
You would think you see that so many places, right? Like I've heard people talking about what I was talking about, having this guy running a shop and how good he is. And some of the districts talking about, they said like, oh, it's so nice to have that, because I've worked at places where it feels like we're two different companies. When you talk about the shop and the fleet, it's like you're fighting to get your stuff in. It's like, I thought we were on the same team. And that's what they're saying. And that's such a breath of fresh air when you get somebody that all wants to work together, and just how much everything works nicer. But you see that all over. It's just a lesson that is, eternally being learned, of that, when you're on the same side, you need to realize that people get so focused on protecting and holding on to what they got. They forget that, everybody's working together here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh man.
So true.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hey, and then something I heard you bring up, just kind of in passing, there was the machining, and does that fall under your purview, or is that kind of a separate one? Because that's not really transportation.
Yeah, that's a whole different area altogether, but a very cool one.
That's kind of what I wanted to say. So recently, well, I don't know about recently, probably in the last couple of years, I've really fallen in love with this YouTube channel. It's called Adam Savage's Tested. So did you ever watch Mythbusters with Adam Savage?
Yeah.
So it's him, and he was I never really realized, I thought he was more of an actor, but he's a builder, right? And that's all. He worked at Industrial Light and Magic, doing all the film magic for like the Star Wars movies and all that stuff. He was a big builder. So then when Mythbusters stopped, he started this YouTube channel, and he has a beautiful shop in San Francisco, and he just does projects, whatever catches his eye. He just builds projects, walks you through it, and he's super entertaining. He was on TV for 15, 20 years, right? So he has that, but he is such a resource for people to learn new techniques. And he does like tool tips. He'll talk about really good tools, cheap tools. Like it is beyond, but he's gotten really into machining lately. And I'd always heard the term machining and that, but I never really understood what it is and all the precision that goes into it. And that is so fascinating. Like, I can't believe how much goes into machining and just the stuff he builds. Like, and phenomenal. And the tolerances that you have to work within and stuff, and all the different techniques there are. And these, I don't know what it's called, like those electric mills that you program it all in on the computer, and then it cuts all these holes and cuts all these forms and stuff, and all the knowledge you have to have. How cool is that shit? Yeah,
that's all the CNC stuff. And
CNC,
it's very cool stuff. And again, I already alluded, I have one staff member that is on the machining side of things. Yeah. He's an automotive mechanic as well. He's my fabricator. It's pretty cool because, prior to hiring him, we'd be limited on what we could build. We could build some pretty cool things, which we thought were pretty cutting edge. And then he came in, and I can remember hiring him, and, he came to me and he said, I got an idea. I want to renovate my workshop space. And I said, okay, give me a drawing and let me know what you need. Like, essentially my role comes down, I'm the administrative side of things. So it comes down to the money, the timing, the classes, right? That's my role, right? So let me know what we need to do. He came in, most guys would have come in with a piece of paper and a shitty drawing, for lack of better words, just going, here's where I want a bench, here's where I want a toolbox. He came in with a 3D CAD drawing.
Holy shit.
And said, here's the bench I want to build. Here's the material cost down to the penny. Here's the toolbox I need. Here's the tools. And I just went, oh, wow. Yeah. So you come to me with a good business plan, I'm all over that. And you know what? It's phenomenal. And he does that now with every project. So he'll come to you and he'll pitch something at you and say, okay, I gotta go over, again, we've got probably, it's got to be $15-20 million worth of machining equipment at NAIT. It's a massive event. They've got their entire own building. There's that much product in there, right? So he has full access to that space. It's very cool. He can go over and build something, and he'll explain it to you, and then he comes to you afterwards and just goes, wow. So if you want a cool YouTube channel to check out too, it's Gord's Garage. Yeah, he's a hobbyist. He does a lot of cool things at home. And yeah, I remember, I'll never forget this. When we interviewed him, he had so much to say. And, you know, most of our interviews, we limit them to 1 hour.
Yeah.
And he was talking and I finally had to give him like the time out. I'm like, you know what, buddy? Like, there's a lot. I can tell you're talented. And he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He said, I brought my iPad with some of my projects on here. I'm just going to leave that on the table while I pack up my stuff here. If you don't mind just browsing through some of the things I did, right?
Yeah.
I remember flipping through a few of them and I looked across at the program chair that was interviewing with me and we looked at each other and we're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
We got to hire this guy right now.
Exactly.
It's phenomenal stuff. So yeah, and it's pretty cool. He was instrumental in helping me on my my Camaro. So I've got a 69 Pro Street Camaro.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen pictures of that one yet, but
I think you may have showed me pictures. I don't think it was fully done maybe when you showed me.
Yeah, it's still not done. So
fair enough.
You know, that
Never
whole argument in life, there's either not enough time or not enough money. So
yeah.
I spent the money. I've got all the parts I need. I just need the time to finish it now. But, you know, when I was working on that, he came over and watched me on the campus one week. And I was building this in the campus, using the body shop. I used a frame machine as a jig to hold all the pieces.
Yeah.
So he came over and he's talking to me. He says, well, what are you doing with suspension? So I don't know. I hadn't really.
Yeah.
I'm got there. Do what everybody else does. I'm going to put coilover shocks in the back end and that's it. I'm done. Right. And he says,
you could do that.
And I said, okay, you got my attention. What
what do you got?
He goes, if you don't mind, can I throw an idea at you? And I said, sure. So he went home. He said, I'm going to send you some drawings, right? So his drawings, again, are very elaborate. It's like looking at a video. So he comes back with something called a push rod style suspension, which I'd never heard of. So apparently this is common on Jag and Porsche, where it is a very unique setup. It basically, the shocks are hidden out of sight. It's a very clean look. So I started talking to him more about it. And I said, well, you know, I did some investigating on this. It's pretty cool. There's one company out there that builds this for Mustangs only. Nobody builds it for Camaros. He goes, well, yeah, we'll just build it. So this guy literally machined every component.
Wow.
We did a mock-up. This blows my mind to this day. He came in on a Saturday. He says, I'll bring some things down, help me take some measurements. He said, I'll machine everything at home. Yeah. He's got his own lathe. He's fully set up at home. And it's pretty cool because he lives in a very, very nice house.
Yeah.
You know, you pull into this neighborhood and you're like, okay, this is an upscale neighborhood. Nobody's working on their own cars there. You look at his garage. They custom built the house around the garage.
Wow.
So he's got 12-foot ceilings. He's got a 4-car garage that he works in. And then they got a triple car garage they park in.
Wow.
It's all tucked under the house. So you don't even see it. Very cool stuff. So anyhow, as he starts building this, so he fabs up all these pieces and we put it in the car. It's crazy. It's crazy, the technology behind it. And, you know, he goes as far as he actually sent it to mechanical engineers and said, can you verify that?
Double check my numbers here.
Are right? Yeah. Check. And they all came back and went, this is brilliant. It's cool stuff. Right. So again, that's one of those trades I would love to have, had a chance to play it. I mean, you know, we did shop class in high school. You got to, you know, play a little bit on there, but certainly not to the degree we're doing here. So
exactly. But I feel like that's one of those things where it's like, even I feel like when I realized what all went into machining and what it was, I feel like it was almost, I wish I would have known earlier what it was, because I would have never even thought that might have been something I want to pursue. Probably not, because I'm not that handy, but I wouldn't have even had an idea what it was, right? And I feel like that's unfortunate, because I bet you that's lots of people too. And probably, you know, there's probably people that don't know what heavy duty mechanics are, right? Like we're so engrossed in it all the time that we're very familiar, but there's probably people that grow up in cities that have never seen under the hood of a Peterbilt, right? In their life. Whereas, you know, I grew up, you know, 8 years old, climbing around under the hood of Peterbilts, right? It didn't help me when I had to work on them, but at least I, you know, knew how to open it.
You knew your way around. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the, you know, the things we were talking about this recently, and how do we get more knowledge out there to the public? Because exactly, I can relate to many trades just because of my experience at NAIT.
Right.
I can remember starting at NAIT. I started in the auto body program was on a satellite campus in the West End, and sheet metal is in there. I assimilated sheet metal to building ductwork in a house. And I'm like, who the frick wants to do that for a living? Like, how mind numbing would that be? Then you go in there and you see they're the guys that are building the stainless steel sinks and counters for hospitals and all this custom one-off stuff, right? I had no idea. And again, like you just said, in hindsight, I would have gone into that in a heartbeat. I love that. I'm fascinated by what they can build in there, right? So when you marry the best of both worlds, you know, if I was a shop owner building custom cars, I would have a sheet metal tech on staff and that equipment there. You can build every panel on a car.
Yeah. And that is
pretty cool. When I'm
shit.
working on this Camaro of mine, we built a lot of custom panels.
Yeah.
When I say we, one of the sheet metal instructors is a very close friend of mine.
Yeah.
I'd go in there and say,
That's
here's
handy.
what we're building. We take some meameasurements. He'd whip it up, and you're like, this is freaking awesome.
Oh, that is awesome, eh?
Right? You're pumping out your own panels right there. Yeah. And, $1 million worth of tooling helps.
Yeah, no shit, hey? Oh.
But it's very cool. But yeah, we do a disservice because we don't do a good job at letting people know what the trades are. So again, COVID was really cool with this because it forced us to do something very different. Yeah. NAIT always does an annual open house, much like the universities do, all colleges do. So you basically are open for 3 days on display. 3 days out of an entire year, you're on display. Yeah. That's terrible. Yeah. Because we have no idea. If those people can't make it during that time, then they miss it, right? So we actually hired a video company to come in and do flybys of all the shop areas.
That's awesome.
It is awesome, and it's super cool because now you can click on it and you can say, hey, I want to look at what an automotive service tech does. Yeah. You can do a flyby through the shop. You can get hands-on detail. You can see what they're actually doing and kind of get a feel for it. Whereas we never did that before.
Yeah. And if someone's listening and they want to go check that out, where would they go to find those videos, Scott?
They're just on NAIT's website, so NAIT.ca.
Yeah. And you guys got a YouTube channel too?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, I was gonna say,
isn't that crazy?
you probably guys should, and just put all those videos on there, because then it gets into the algorithm and people just find it there. Because a lot of times guys go to the NAIT website, but then someone will just stumble upon it and they're looking at auto body work, and then they stumble upon it too. I mean, I know NAIT would, if you threw $100 at boosting it and just put it on the YouTube algorithm with a boost, and I'm sure you'd bring in a lot more people. Not, you guys said you already got wait lists. It's not like you need people.
No, but still, it's nice to provide that service, right?
Exactly.
We actually talked about that probably about January of this year. We started talking about that, saying, why don't we have a YouTube channel?
Seems like a no-brainer.
Will come in and say, how do you change a wheel bearing? How do you change this? Yeah. And it actually stemmed from I can't think of the online company right now, but there's a part company where you can order all your product online from them. Yeah. And they actually have tutorial videos. So if you're buying a wheel bearing, you can click on a video on how to put grease in a wheel bearing. Yeah. Crazy stuff. And we're looking at it going, we're the ones who are teaching industry, yet we have nothing out there, right? Yeah. And it's not going to replace the curriculum. It's just showing people, how do I check this? How do I check that? Yeah. And even it's interesting. One of the classes we offered in our continuing education side for a long time was automobile basics.
Right.
So this isn't teaching you to be a mechanic. It's teaching you that, hey, you just went out and bought a new car. Do you even know where the spare tire is?
Exactly.
How to change that tire. So part of that curriculum was you bring your car down. It's a Saturday. It's a one-day course. You bring your vehicle. We're going to actually have you take your spare out. We're going to have you put that on the car and walk you through that in a heated, warm environment. Because when you're on the side of the road, it's minus 40 and there's cars ripping by you at 120. It's a shitty deal at that point. Yeah. You want to be out of there as fast as you can, right?
That's when it's easy to forget to tighten the bolts across pattern, and forget to have the brake on or something. That's put all those other factors in. If you can do it once in a nice controlled environment, that's exactly what you're looking for. And just on that YouTube idea too, I think that'd be cool, because then you could also video some of the projects that the students do, because I think you've already showed me a couple things that just talented students come through, and and I thought that'd be another area where you could just showcase what the talent that you guys are grooming and producing there. I think that'd be another added benefit to having something like that, and kind of rolls into a whole other area of kind of questioning that I wanted to bring you through. Something, because I'm so into future media sources or whatever it is, right? Like podcasts, like YouTube channels, like streaming. I think that is the future. And just, I've watched so many people grow from a small little following to a huge success, that, monetary success and all that. And I'm thinking, I'm curious who's going to do it first, whether universities are going to start offering courses on how to be a YouTuber or a podcaster or a streamer, or if it's going to be the trade schools. And I feel like it's a race to whoever thinks of it first, because it's so clear to me. And I feel like trade schools is the place to be, because now, what also, I think this is also a kind of a separate point, but goes with it, is I also wish that in all post-secondaries, there was something where, and I think trade schools probably have this more just because of how much closer of a relationship they have between the teachers and the students compared to like a university environment. And I can only use my university environment as a placeholder for this, but I wish there was something for people to look out for, those really bright flames. Those students that have come by and they have a talent that is special, and could go work for some guy and they would be an amazing employee, and that employee would be so happy to have them. But just that constraint of having an employer telling them what to do is going to constrain what they could do. And to look out for those people and to try and just take it. I wish there was a class that you could put it in where, you know, even if it wasn't something you could sign up for, you but just put them in and just say, how could you make money off this? There's a couple kids from Slave where I see one of them is one of my best friends growing up, Cody Miller. He was, I've talked to him a couple times on the podcast, but just so creative and so good with his hands, and he would build knives and he would do all this stuff. And I was thinking, and now looking back, I said, if someone would have got that kid a fucking camera and started a YouTube channel, he would be a fucking star and his life would be different, right? Like stuff like that. Or there's another guy from Slave that I keep sharing all his stuff on my podcast Instagram channel. His name's Lonnie Brost, and he has this Instagram channel called Brost Builds, and he builds the coolest shit, like just, you know, stuff for his girlfriend or cool axes to chop up wood and stuff. And he actually messaged me, and I've been, you know, bugging him. I said, start a YouTube channel. He's bugging. I think he's kicking the idea around, but like guys like that. And if you could give them a little bit of help, because I think that is its whole skill in its own of learning how to record and edit video and all that. And if you could combine their natural skills with that and then give them these outputs. So now how do you monetize this? How do you take this passion that you have and maybe you don't fit, and you could also keep on the lookout for guys that maybe don't fit in that traditional, guys like me, where I don't do very well with authority and people telling me what to do. And in school, that made me butt heads. The high school, I fought with every teacher other than a couple, right? And it was usually the ones that were hard asses, right? The military type teachers that I could respect. But other than that, I would have that. And you can find these ways to, you're probably, if we try and put you down the normal path of what society wants you, just, you know, get a job, report to this person, all that stuff, that's just not really for you. And you could try and, you know, just siphon those people off and find ways to bring them into their own. I just think something like a future media course where you teach people how to start a podcast, a YouTube channel, or a streaming service, and then just take whatever it is that's their passion and just build that for them. I know that didn't really turn into a question at the end. It's more of just a statement, but I kind of just wanted to run the idea by you because it's been bouncing around in my head for months.
Yeah. I think that's brilliant. I think there's definitely a need out there. And, you know, even just exposure across the country on that. You look at YouTube, not everybody knows you can actually make a living off of YouTube. For sure. Right?
A good living.
Honestly, it's shocking. A lot of people just think that's random videos. Yeah. And how are these people doing these things, right? It's mind-blowing. Yeah, there's definitely a fit for that.
Yeah, it just depends on where's going to be the first place to do it, right? And who's the right person. And you need all it's going to take is one person to do it and kind of come in and force the industry. And then you'll see that I just feel like as soon as one person does it, the success will be seen and you'll see a couple people really grow from it. And then from there, it'll be off to the races. Everyone will be offering it. And that's where I see kind of where we started the conversation of the changes we're going to see with COVID and post-secondary education on all levels. I think those are the type of things we're going to see is just shifting towards kind of, you know, this is almost catch-up time, you know, like you said, the industries are a little bit behind on what they're teaching. Everything's a little bit behind, right? Like, and that's what it is. But then something like this happens where it allows for a bit of that catch-up where it's not like you're going to be, you might be spinning your tires doing the traditional path. And it just almost takes away some of the sunk costs on it because you're not doing anything anyway. So making a big change, there's not as much cost associated with it, right? So you can kind of take a risk, take a big swing.
Yep. And you can keep everything more relevant because it is digital, right?
Yeah.
I get it. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe if I get a little bit better at this, I'll start teaching a podcasting course at NAIT.
I was just going to say, I think I'm talking to the guy that should be spearheading this right here.
I'd do it in a fucking heartbeat. You know, I would. I think I'd be awesome at it too, just myself, but I'm a cocky motherfucker. So who knows? Maybe I'll get humbled pretty quick. This whole journey with the podcast has been a lot of humbling at points, you know, this is going to be easy. Editing can't be that hard. Holy fuck. You know, and then I
can't even imagine.
Oh, and then you have someone that comes in like I was telling you before, like Brennan, who's been helping with this, and just it's not like he knows a lot of this stuff, but he's just very good at Googling and figuring it out, and just how nice it is to have someone come on and just give you a little bit of help where you're just drowning, keeping your head above water, and then someone comes in and just, I can breathe. This is amazing.
Yeah. And look at your first podcast versus the last one you did. I mean,
exactly.
You have come a huge distance in there, right?
And it's I'm not very good at that of keeping that in mind. I'm always so focused on where it's all the stuff I need to do that I have to be better at that, of looking back and realizing that. And that's something I'm trying to work on and be better at it. But I don't know where that comes from. Maybe that's always seeing Ingo, just always what's ahead. You know, it's hard to look back and
looking at the next step. Yeah.
Appreciate what you've done, but it's very important. I think, you know, and that's part of about the lessons that you got to teach kids coming up too, because that's one of those things, the soft skills of those things. And I'm guessing this, but I would imagine a lot more of that gets passed on through trade schools than it does in universities, just because, you know, I never had a relationship with any professor throughout my whole degree. Maybe one or two in a very limited space, but I would imagine like when I talked to Drew and stuff, you know, he went for beers with some of his teachers and stuff, and they were good guys, and they taught him more than just what they taught in the classroom, right? They taught him some real life lessons, and I think that is so important. And I think in business specifically, I was thinking when you brought up the pre-employment stuff for that, I was thinking, man, I wish business would have had that, because you could see kids come into that who had never worked before. They had gone through all their high school, and everyone has different, you know, maybe they were into sports, maybe they had something else on the go where they couldn't work, but it was very obvious the kids that had been in the workforce already and were now going into business, right? A couple of the older students and stuff. And then you see these kids that came in and had no experience in the real world, and how they acted was so clear. And it was like, oh, why is someone not pulling this kid aside and teaching him these things to show, like, because if you act like you're acting in this class where you're shouting down a professor and acting like a prick, you walk into the workforce and try that shit, it's not going to go well. Right. Exactly. And I'm sure he'll learn that lesson quite quick. Those type of people, they're going to why let them struggle? Why let them learn that on the hard way when you can take them aside and bring some of that stuff forward? And I just wish, I would imagine, like I said, trade schools probably have a bit more of that. And we could always be better in all areas. I'm sure we could find ways to up that too, but it's nice that you probably at least have a little bit of it. Right. Is that something as a higher up in that, do you try and get your teachers to embrace that?
Oh, 100%. And, you know, that's part of the NAIT culture. You know, it's pretty cool. I remember even coming through as an apprentice myself. I went to NAIT. You know, I didn't go down the university path, so I can't speak to what that avenue would look like. But from the NAIT side of things, I can remember, you literally felt like you got to know your instructors as a buddy. And in like Drew was saying, we went for beers with some of them. I mean, it was, you know, there was one instructor, everybody wanted to get him for one period of training, because, you know, right at 3:00 when classes are done, he'd always say, oh, I'll buy the first round, right? I'll meet you over there. Yeah. You're like, that's awesome, right? Like, very cool people. And even to this day, it's super cool. You know, I remember even when I started as an instructor, I never dreamed I would have wanted to teach. Never. It wasn't in my wish list at all. I loved the trade. I loved doing the work. I love seeing the rewards of that. I kind of fell into NAIT, to be honest. I started my career path there, and I remember the first class I taught, and just like when we have our own kids, you can just see that light bulb come on when you teach them a new concept. That's what it was like in a class. And you look around in the room, you got 24 students, and you're just like, holy shit, you guys just got a concept that I took for granted, but you guys are just sitting here like amazed, right? Yeah. You start building a very cool rapport, and it's always interesting. I remember, you know, you teach a first year class and they would refer to you as Mr. Sinclair. Yeah. By second year, it was, you know, hey, Scott. Third year was kind of like a mix of Scott and Scotty. By fourth year, it'd be like, Scotty. For drinks tonight. Like, you became buddies with them, right? And I mean, awesome. Many of them now that I've taught over the years are shop owners, and I still see them on a regular basis. And it's, you know, when you see them on the street, it'd be no different than me bumping into you on the corner somewhere going, holy shit, how have you been? Right. And you catch up, or your friends on Facebook. So it's pretty cool watching them navigate through that. And you genuinely form those bonds there. And, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned, you know, when we get the superstars coming through, and you should really take them and groom them a little bit more. You know, I'll tell you a good success story we had in there was we had a student that came in the pre-employment class that I was teaching, and female student. We had 3 females in that class. At that time, there was very few females in the auto body trade. So it was pretty awesome to see 3 of them come into a class at once. And I was the associate program chair at the time. So she came to me and she said, I need to ask for a day off because I have to go write my high school diploma exam.
Holy shit.
What? She was 17. Wow. So fresh out of school, wanted to work on cars. And I remember, you know, one of the things I used to always ask my students, especially in the pre-employment, was I'd come around, you know, in the class, I'd say to them, part of my bonding thing is I'd say, you know what, tell me why you're in here. Why did you take the class? You get a mix of everything from, you know, you get some students that say, well, mom and dad said either go to school or get a job. So you're stuck with me for 3 months, right? You're like, awesome. You are not going to probably do well in this, right? And then you get the other ones, and it came to her and she looked at me dead serious and she goes, I fucking love cars. I just don't know what to do to fix them. And I'm like, oh, okay. Awesome. And she goes, I used to always tinker on cars with my dad, but she goes, he doesn't know how to do the auto body stuff. She said, so I'm here to learn that and hopefully be a leader in this. And she goes, I love this. I love this trade, right? And I thought, okay, 17 years old, saw a huge future. And it was pretty cool at the time. We were shooting a recruitment video for the program. We actually interviewed her on that video.
Yeah.
So you see this young version, and I remember, I didn't teach her second year, had her again for third year, saw her kind of come through, and you just started seeing her mold into this fabulous person. And I thought, I said to my instructional staff, I said, one day she needs to teach here.
Yeah.
And we hired her 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So
awesome.
It's pretty awesome when you take somebody that is, 12 years ago was coming through there as a brand new student, and now she is the first female instructor in auto body in NAIT's history.
That's awesome.
And she's by far setting that world stage for females everywhere. So you're starting to see more females come through, and she has a whole different take on it, right?
Yeah.
So, and very well respected across the country. I mean, she does airbrushing, she does all kinds of custom stuff. Very cool success stories where you get to know your students,
awesome.
right?
That is so awesome. Stuff like that. That's what gets you. That's what gets you up in the morning. Like stuff like that. And that was actually one of my questions I had written down. Was I was just curious, like, how much do you feed off of that? You're in a very creative environment, and you're seeing a lot of that come through. And how much of that do you feed off of? How much is that of seeing these people and watching their growth in that? How much is that feeds you?
Oh, it's huge. That's what I live for. I mean, that's your reward, right? You're seeing people. You genuinely are putting them on their life path, right?
Yeah.
The ones that are passionate with that trade, they stick with it. They love it.
Yeah.
And you can almost handpick them. And I can honestly tell you, across all of the programs that I work with, we have staff in there that you remember them as students in every one of those trades where you say, I remember this one coming through and there was something special. And here they are, right? And it's pretty cool. And you never know where exactly they're going to go. I mean, you and I were at SEMA, 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think about 3 years ago.
With Ingo?
Yeah.
And one of my former students actually got on a show down there called Vegas Rat Rods.
Oh yeah.
So she actually went down there. She was a student working hard here, a very, very skilled, auditioned for the show and ended up getting on the show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Long story short, her whole life has changed. She now lives in Vegas, not doing the show anymore, but pretty cool when you see somebody from, where was she from? I don't know, somewhere just north of Edmonton anyhow. I want to say Onaway area or somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Anyhow, small town country girl and loved working on cars. Same thing. Auditions for the show, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I taught her this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's pretty cool stuff. And here she is on national TV, keeping up, and she's got her own deal going on down there now. She's got her own shop.
And that's very cool. And that's kind of goes to the point I was making earlier, just about trying to put a couple more paths in front of these people, because you can see if you don't just get stuck on one path and you just follow, instead of following what the path is supposed to take you, if you just follow the passion itself, right? If you're passionate about cars and you don't get locked into, I'm passionate about cars, so I have to work in a shop, right? That's the only option. If you leave it open to that and just chase the passion itself, that's usually takes you to some pretty cool places, as long as that passion is genuine and you can, it keeps refreshing. You don't burn yourself out on it. You're going to be chasing it. And I think that's just so cool. If you added a couple different, pathways in front of you, where if you really don't, you really don't match that box that it kind of puts you in, where you could be that person where if you have a car to work on, it doesn't matter where it is, right? It doesn't matter if you have a boss on you, because as soon as you start pulling wrenches, that all goes away and that's your happy place. And I'm sure that's
your happy place. Yeah.
That's a lot of people, but some people, it's your happy place. But as soon as you got that guy barking over your shoulder, it's not your happy place anymore. And you chase it thinking this is what's going to be. And you get to that end and it's not exactly what it was all cracked up to be. And some people just go, well, I've already invested this much time. There's no other options. This is, I guess, what I'm stuck with. And when you have a couple more options at your disposal, I think it's just nice to give people more avenues to go down. And I think that's what's cool.
Well, when I was growing up, I always heard, if you find the right career path, it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
It feels, it's your hobby. And you're like, yeah, that's bullshit. That'll never happen. Right. And, I had, both my parents had long-term careers. They came from that generation that, if you started at whatever company that you just stayed at that job, you could hate it. And they did. They hated their jobs. And I remember, I can remember sitting around the supper table thinking, oh my God, like you have nothing good to say about your jobs ever. You guys come home and it's just never glitter and rainbows. It's always just doom and gloom, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. And I can honestly say I've found that now. And, you put in the long hours now and you put in that effort. I've really got a very cool mix of what I get to do. I mean, as I said, my role is really administrative, but I get access to the shops 24/7.
Yeah.
So I can pause my day at any time. I can walk to the shops. I can chat with the staff, chat with the students. And it's really like I've got 100 close friends that work under my portfolio that I can go in and
awesome.
shoot the shit with them at any time, and you see what the students are doing, and you chat with them, and you do all kinds of cool things, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's very, very cool.
Yeah, I bet that is exactly it, right? Like same thing. I always heard Ingle, he would always go, I love going to work. I love getting up in the morning because I love going to work. And he always loved work. And that was always something I saw. And I was always like, man, that will never be me. I will never once, like, I just don't think that's with it. I don't think I have it in me. I don't think I will ever enjoy going to work. And then when I got this position, I started feeling, I even told him one day, like, I get what you're talking about. Like this, now that I'm doing this and I'm doing what I want, it's this high level stuff. Right. And I enjoyed it for a long time. And then, it started to be, there were certain parts of it I enjoyed and certain parts I didn't. And then for a while, it was getting to the point where I was falling into that trap where, I didn't have anything good to say and it was all negative, and the bad stuff was outweighing the good, even though there was days where I get to work on stuff that was really cool, the high level. But then there's days where you're just babysitting, you're dealing with interpersonal shit, and it just drags you down. Right. And then, and then I found this podcast, and, it took a point to find that. And then now this is a whole nother level. If I thought I loved going into work for that, I think I was maybe misspeaking. I liked going to work, which was also a huge step forward. I'd never even liked going to work. That was a huge step. But now this, I love this. There's nothing like this. Like when I get off an interview like this, I'm running around the house, I'm bouncing, I can't get the grin off my face. And it's just something like that. Like I've never found that before. And now finding that, it's like, oh, I could do this forever. Even if it never ends up making money, if it never becomes a success, just doing it, just enjoying the actual conversation, the editing after and the organizing and trying to schedule it. That's less enjoyable, but the payoff is so much. And just to open up that door to have people try and find this, right? Like maybe somebody really enjoys auto body, but then like you said, that guy barking over their shoulder takes that away. But if they could find a way where they could just work on their own projects of what they want, video, and put them on YouTube and start to monetize that. And now they get to wake up every day with this feeling that I get from this. And it's like, what gets me going and the ideas of like starting classes is now, how can I bring this to the world and just make it so you couldn't find it for everyone. It's going to take them work, and they're going to have to do some, sitting with themselves to find what that is, but you can give them some skills to monetize whatever that is, right? You work on finding the passion. I'll work on monetizing your passion, right? And you make
absolutely.
And I put it in terms of future media as a class, because you have to put a title on it to make it structured in some way. But really, all it is, the class should be called monetizing your passion. Really, that's what it's all about, right? And those are just a couple avenues that you could do that with, right? And I think that's going to be the future, and somebody's going to take advantage of it. Could be you and me, but it could be somebody else, but someone's going to do it. I guarantee it, and it's going to be very successful, right?
I'm in. You let me know when we want to start writing the curriculum.
All right, hey, we'll do it tonight. We'll get a couple more whiskeys. We'll get a couple more whiskeys going, and we'll get right into it.
Hey, I do some of my best work with whiskey.
Hey, write drunk, edit sober. That's what I learned. If I didn't learn anything in university, that's what I learned.
I hear you. Yeah.
I was just asking, when was the first SEMA show you got to see?
So it was about 10 years ago.
10 years ago, hey?
About 10 years ago, yeah. So it was interesting. I've always heard about SEMA at that time. Never really, I thought it would be pretty cool to go to one day, but certainly wasn't one of my life goals by any means. And, I remember back then, actually it's probably about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I was working, at NAIT at that point. I was in a leadership role and trying to get companies to partner with NAIT. So when we talked earlier about that government bureaucracy, one of the cool things that we have within NAIT is all kinds of hurdles in front of us to buy new equipment.
Right.
So at that time, we had anything that was essentially over $1,000. It would take us almost a year to get approval to buy that equipment. Sometimes by the time you even got approval to buy it,
it's outdated.
The request you made was already outdated and it was no longer relevant, and it just repeated this cycle, right? So I took a different angle. I started talking to our vendors that sold the equipment, and I said, what will it take to get you to donate these? So started having lots of local meetings, talking to people, and you only get so far when you're dealing with the local vendors, right?
Yeah.
And the best advice I was given is, I had one of them said to me, he says, you really need to go to the SEMA show. He said, at SEMA, you've got all the CEOs of all of these companies there.
Right.
For 1 week. They're all there focused on business. They want to talk. They want to do partnerships. They want to do everything. So he said, your best bang is to go there. Because he said, I can only get you so far up that food chain.
Right.
And it'll stall. You email the CEO of a company, and he said, you're probably never going to hear from them because you're just another guy asking for free shit, right?
Yeah.
So I went there for that, and my mind was blown.
And maybe just before we get too far in it, what does SEMA stand for? And maybe we'll just give a quick overview of what it is too, because probably a lot of people listening have no idea. They never heard that before in their life.
Oh, you're gonna put me
I
on
have
the
no
spot.
idea. I couldn't even spell it. I don't even know if it's an S or a C anymore. Since I was
so it's SEMA. It's Specialty Equipment Marketplace Association, I believe.
right. And it's pretty much it's pretty much a big car show, like the biggest car show in the world in parts and
it is. Yeah, it's the biggest car show in the world. Yeah, there's last year I was there was 240 some thousand people in attendance in 3 days, which is crazy.
Wow.
So 240,000 people drop on your city in 3 days and take
it's always
everything.
In Vegas.
Like it's always Vegas is the only city that can host that. Literally, it's funny because at work when I go in for the approval for this, you got to ask in advance. They're always like, "So you need to go to Vegas for work."
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Buddy, I didn't pick the venue. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. I'm just the messenger here.
If they hosted it in wherever, none of it, I'd be there as well. Like I don't care, right?
Uh-huh.
But yeah, very cool experience. So the first time I was there, my mind was blown, much like yours. I mean, you can't take it all in, as you know.
It's wild.
You'll never see it all. It's huge. It's crazy.
Well, when I got to go meet you down there 3 years ago, me and Ingo, I think we did 3 days there, and we walked. It was just mind-blowing. But there can't be another. When you walk into another building, and it's just this probably 6 football fields worth of just far as the eye can see stands and all these different people and stuff. And you walk through that, and then there can't be another one. And then there's another one, and then there's the outdoor spaces. And then I think we tracked. I think we walked something like 60 kilometers in the 3 days. Both my legs were chafed. Like when we go out at night, I'm walking like a cowboy because I'm so chafed. My feet
I remember that, the heat rash.
I needed to fucking train for going to SEMA, but I had no idea what I was walking into. But I just, every time we'd walk into another building and it was another 6 football fields. And then on the last day, we go down in the basement and now there's all this like Asian market knockoff shit of every part you saw up there. Now there's a whole knockoff thing and it's almost the same size, just underground. And like, like you say, it would be impossible to see everything. Even if you had a freaking like scooter or something and you could rip around there, you still wouldn't see everything.
You still wouldn't. No, it's mind blowing. You're right. And it's only every year it gets bigger. Yeah. I was there last year. And what blew my mind is, if you remember, it's at the Las Vegas Convention Center.
Yeah.
Kitty corner to that. When I was there last year, they actually had imploded a giant casino that was there.
Right.
And they're actually adding on. So there's another 1 million square foot building going on kitty corner, just connected by a pedway. So it was supposed to open this year. I was pretty pumped to go to SEMA this year. Because that was the grand opening. So everything that they had outside, they wanted to bring indoors.
Oh.
Because there's a lot of...
They can't be jumping Ford Raptors inside, because that was one of the coolest things I saw. The Ford Raptors.
That was awesome, right?
Jumping all over the place, and then they had the BMWs doing the drifting. Yeah, fuck, that was cool.
Yeah, cool stuff. And you know what? I've got some of those videos on my Facebook feed, and I watch those every once in a while where I'm just like, I can smell the rubber, I can feel the heat, like that whole environment, right?
That's such
and
a cool
you're in it's the biggest car show in the world, and it is phenomenal, the amount of business people that are there and the amount of business that happens there. I can honestly tell you probably 95% of the partnerships that we have formed within my portfolio have happened at SEMA.
And how was that first year? Were you successful right away with it, or did it take a couple of years to kind of crack
it's like system? Everything, it builds up some speed.
That's what I
like
figured.
You go introduce yourself to people, and it's pretty cool, because when you talk to somebody who, you talk to a vendor that's from San Diego, they've never been to Edmonton, Alberta. So they, as soon as they hear Canada, they picture igloos.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not shitting you. This is like, it's wild how naive some of these people are, right? And so I figured that out very quickly. Year one, I'm like, these people have no idea. When I go down there, when I say NAIT to you, you can assimilate what NAIT is.
Yeah.
And you can understand it's a polytechnic. It's the largest one out here. There's a bunch of things out there, but you go to the US, you're nothing. You are nothing to them, right? So I learned from that one. I made a lot of connections year one, stayed in contact with them. And then when I went back for the second year, I started sending emails out about 2 weeks in advance saying, hey, met you last year. I'm going to be down there again. Are you there? You got time to meet? And I started setting up all these meetings. So it went from, that first year where I really was trying to figure out what the show was, trying to figure out what my purpose was there. And then year two, I had very structured days. So I flew in on the day it started. I spent basically 3 solid days in meetings. And you were booking meetings. Like I left an hour gap in between. Yeah. Just because, like you said, it's so freaking huge. You had to get sometimes from one area, you look at your map, you're like, holy frick, that's like 3 blocks away. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm hoofing it for 20 minutes, right? And also made that mistake year one. I went, I was in pretty dressy clothes for the most part, because they're representing. I thought, I got to look good. And by the end of the day, man, I couldn't even walk. It was like I'm ordering room service because I can't stand up, right? Crazy. yeah, and then it just kind of grew from there, right? So to where you start getting to know these people a little bit more and a little bit more. And then year 2, when I came back, I figured it out. I loaded, we had a digital media team, and they had basically a flyby video of what NAIT is. So there was a lot of stuff, aerial shots, the outside of the building, talks about student capacities, the amount of people we train. I started loading that on a thumb drive, and then I had a very specific video and a handout basically on there about what the auto body program was. So I was working specifically with auto body at that time. I'd go meet with the vendors. I'd introduce myself. I'd give them a business card. I'd hand them the thumb drive and say, you know what, watch this tonight. I'll come back tomorrow and see you. What's a good time to come see you? And I'd basically book times with these executives, right?
Yeah.
And it's very cool. I'd come back in the next day, and I had some of them, they're like, I had no idea. I had no idea. Like, you said NAIT to me, and I was like,
what the fuck is that?
Like, no idea. And they're like, now that I watched this, it was crazy the impact that had, because I had a lot of companies that as soon as they saw that, I'd come see them next day, and they're like, we need to partner.
What can we put in
our equipment? We had no idea this existed in Canada, right? So it was pretty cool, and we got to the point where we actually had so much equipment being donated that we had to say no. Because we don't have enough space in our shop. Where good problems to have, right?
I hope you got a fucking bonus for that, Scott.
I did not, unfortunately. But hopefully my boss will listen to this one day.
No shit, hey.
But it's pretty cool, and you know, we actually even have shops, or we have vendors still to this day that tell us, as soon as you guys get more shop space, let us know. So it's pretty exciting. So
that's awesome.
Another best kept secret. NAIT is about to expand again.
Oh wow.
COVID's obviously hindered this a little bit, but if you've been to our main campus, it's right downtown by Kingsway. Immediately north of there is a 12-acre parcel of land. So it's prime real estate right beside the old Muni Airport.
Nice.
The city gave that to NAIT. So there was some trading went on, but NAIT went in there with a business plan and said, we want to put up a skill center. So there's a 1 million square foot building going in there.
Oh wow.
So out of that building, auto body is going to be some of that space, automotive is going to be some of it. That's going to be the time where I lean hard on these people and these connections that I've built, and I've built over the 10 years that I've been going. Where you lean on them and say, now we've got real estate, what do you want to put in here? And it's pretty cool when you see it. They give you the cutting edge stuff. I mean, you know, we've got some of them, some huge ones where they put product in there, and every few years they swap it out. They sell it as demoed product. Which is pretty cool, because I mean, anybody looking at this product can come in there. It's a neutral training ground. It's not, there's no animosity because it's a competitor shop. It's a neutral space. They can come in. They know when we say we've used it for a year, we've probably used it for about 40 hours in total out of that year. Like, it's very, very minimal use, right? So it's very cool. I was super excited to go with this year, and
it's too bad.
Much like many, it's too bad it got canceled, because that would have been pretty epic to see that other building. So I'm looking forward to when we can go next.
And just to try and get a relative idea, just like 3 years ago when I saw the size, how much of the size difference did you notice from going, 12 years ago to maybe last year? Was it quick, or kind of just little bits at a time growing, or was it already pretty freaking huge already 12 years ago?
It was huge then. So there was a little bit of outdoor stuff when I went then. The drifting was still happening outside in the parking lot. But if you remember, I guess it'd be on the southeast side of the building, there was a lot of like the big top tents. We went, that was never there years ago. That was new. So as it grows, they keep putting in these bigger buildings. It's just wild. It's wild how much stuff there is there. And when you walk through that one area of the new innovation, it's mind blowing. The stuff that people have come up with. You look at something and you go, that's brilliant. Like, why didn't we do this before? Right?
How did nobody think of this? How did
nobody think of it? Or we've done this for years. We just never put a patent on it and carried on and made the royalties. Right?
And something that I noticed there too is, usually if you're anywhere else other than that, you might come across something like that, once every couple months, something will blow you away, but you're walking through that and it's over and over. Every 20 minutes, you're seeing something like, holy fuck, how I need to get one of those. Oh, we need one of those. Oh, we need 2 of those. Right. Like, it's just like your mind's being just blown over and over again. So not only is it physically exerting to walk around the whole place, but then just mentally taxing of just taking in all this thing. And then you have to go out and party after, because you're in Vegas and, you can't waste that time. Oh, no, hard. It's a tough life.
It's a tough life. Yeah. Well, I always laugh because, again, my executives that have to sign off on my travel itinerary, they're like, you're going there for, for us, it was usually a 4-day trip, right? You'd fly in the night before it started. You'd spend a solid 3 days there, fly home day 4. And they'd be like, yeah, you're in Vegas for 4 days, you poor thing. Right. And it's like, You have no idea how
come with you one time. Come see.
Day one, you're pumped. You're like, yeah, let's do this, let's do that. But by 5 o'clock, you get to your hotel room, your feet are throbbing.
Oh yeah.
And again, I've worn out. Like I literally wear out an entire pair of shoes when I'm there. They're just they're done. Like they hurt, right?
Yeah.
So you go through that process, but you push through. You come back, you recharge, and then you head out and you take on the strip, and carry on with the night. But it's mind blowing there. It's huge.
That is so cool. So then I imagine probably, schools like SAIT and stuff probably followed your lead. I mean, and I'm guessing other people that are kind of in your similar position for the other trades, they probably go down there too, or to other trade schools. No, you're the only one that's doing it. Hey, wow. Yeah. It seems like a no-brainer.
You know what? It's interesting is SAIT it's a sister institute to us. I mean, it's the North South competition all the time. That's always out there, but we teach the exact same curriculum. We're in Alberta. We do the exact same thing. We're the two big dogs out there that are teaching it, know their crew very well. And it's interesting. We always, once a year, we go down and see each other's, we just go stay connected with staff, see what they're doing in their shops. And it's interesting. If you go down there, their building is probably, I will say conservatively, 8 times the size of our space that we have for auto body alone. They have nothing. It's just shit that they've got. And you talk to them like, why don't you have better equipment? They're like, well, there's no money, there's no budget.
Yeah.
We also do almost triple the number of students they do in a year for each of the trades, right? So there's a big difference there. But then they come to ours and they're like, holy shit, you guys got the latest equipment for everything in here, right? And it's because of those relationships, but they aren't supported to go.
I guess if you can't get there, you're not going to be able to put those deals together.
No,
you need the right person. You need a guy like you that's willing to go in there and make those connections and go back year after year and make sure they know who you are.
Yeah, and then that's part of it too. You got to come back with some success stories, right? If I was to go to Vegas for 4 days and come back and go, yeah, we got nothing out of this. I've yet to come back other than year one when I went, which was the inception of it. And I asked them, I said, you know what? I need 3 years. I need to go 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
If I haven't come back with anything after year 3, I'm done going. Like I'll pay my own way just to go hang out for a week and party, right?
Yeah.
But every year now when I go, it's wild. Usually while I'm at SEMA, deals are already happening. By the time I get back, they're just being processed, right?
Yeah.
It's super cool. And like we even have equipment shipped out while we're there. So I'll message my staff and I'm like, hey, this is coming in. It's being shipped out today. I don't know what it might arrive tomorrow. It's crazy.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's built up speed. And again, I was super pumped to go this year. Last year, it's like everything. When you do it over and over, you kind of get down to a fine-tuned machine.
Yeah.
Had it figured out. You know your hot spots where you need to go. You know the spots where if you've got time to kill, you can go hang out. But
the cool thing.
But it's wild. Yeah.
All the innovations happening.
The innovations happening.
And then another thing that kind of I didn't have this as a question written down, but just kind of talking, it came up. So I'm curious. It seems like NAIT is one of the, on the cutting edge, like best equipment, best of all that stuff, putting through a lot of throughput. But I always am curious what the American equivalent is. Is there the Taj Mahal of tech schools down the States somewhere? Like, have you ever gone down and seen some of the stuff south of the border and gone to see what's going on down there?
So I haven't actually been in any of the tech schools down there, but you look at their presence online. Certainly met some of the staff when I was at SEMA. It's interesting the support they've got. So UTI is a huge one. Horrible acronym, but
that's what I was saying. UTI, nice.
I didn't pick it, but anyhow, Universal Technical Institute. They've got a large presence. So if you look at their heavy equipment program, they've got an entire wing that's the Peterbilt wing. They got the Kenworth wing. They've got the Mack wing. They've got so all the OEMs have really stepped up and said, hey, we're going to support the shit out of this. The trouble they have though is training is not mandated down there.
Right.
So it's optional. So they've got a very different, you can work in a heavy equipment environment with no training, or you can take your training. Yeah. Whereas here, and we have a handful of those too. Not all trades are compulsory here. We have a lot of trades that are not compulsory.
What ones wouldn't be compulsory?
Here?
Yeah.
So outdoor power equipment, for example, one of the ones that's under mine, it's a non-compulsory trade. So you can work in a sled shop. You could have gone to NAIT and be making $45 an hour. I could just be handy and know my way around it and still be making the same wage as you. And I never went to school. Whereas in auto body, automotives, heavy equipment, they're like 99% of them, you have to attend technical training or you can't work in the trade.
Right.
Period.
Unless you're getting paid cash. which also happens
Well,
in
always,
a lot of places. Yeah.
It does happen.
And some of the best mechanics you see are guys that never had a lick of training and just have been doing that their whole lives. They're 65 years old and they fucking know how to whip shit around. And just,
you know what? I have a brother that's an electrician. Never taken any mechanical training. The guy can build hot rods with his eyes closed, does his own mechanical, builds his engines, does his body, does his paint. And I'm like, wow, why did you not go into that as a career?
You're making us look bad here. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like it's crazy, but you're right. You don't necessarily have to have that training to do it, right?
That's interesting. So then in the States, there's no, it's any of the trades that are non-compulsory for any of them. It's just optional.
There's not a governing body down there that I'm aware of. No.
Wow.
Nope. Wow. So you can take training or you cannot. So I'll give you a good example. If you've ever seen Gas Monkey Garage.
Yeah.
Aaron Kaufman, you know Aaron?
Yeah, I think mechanic. So. Yeah.
So I met Aaron down at SEMA 3-4 years ago. Yeah. When their show was really hot. So he was there one day. He was I don't know what he was doing. He was going somewhere. I bumped into him. I'm like, hey Aaron, can I get a picture with you? Chatting with him. And as I'm talking to him, I see he's holding this flyer and it says self-professed master mechanic. So I go, what's that all about? And he goes, and he looks down at my name tag because at SEMA you got to wear the tags, right? Yeah. And he goes, oh, you're from a trade school. He goes, real men don't need training. You just figure shit out. And I'm like, that's funny shit.
Yeah, no
right?
shit.
Like, and but look at him. Who's the success in there? He's on a TV show. He is obviously mechanically inclined. He's doing his own thing in there. I mean, people can pick it apart too, and they can say, he's only building or he's only taking crate engines and he's bringing people in to tune them. He's still installing all the shit and hooking it up. That takes some skill, right?
Of course.
So pretty cool stuff. But he's like, and remember talking to him, right? And just the lack of training they have down in the U.S. Because it's not mandated. There's no curriculum, and everybody has a different theory. I can remember talking to a guy in the auto body side. From West Coast Customs. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Small entity. So I was looking at it. They had a Chrysler 300, and they did a wide body kit on it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this car, and I'm like, holy shit, dude! Your filler is like 2 inches thick on the back. Like you sculpted this thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm chatting with the guy, right? And he goes, oh, he goes, it is thick. He goes, I'll let you in on a little trade secret. I go, yeah, what's that? He goes, window mesh.
Window mesh.
What? Window mesh. He goes, yeah, the window screens. He goes, you can get window screen that's vinyl, or you can get the aluminum ones.
Yeah.
Don't use the aluminum one. But he goes, get the vinyl one. You embed that in the filler. He goes, you can put that shit 3 inches thick. It'll never crack. Like,
well, it's like putting rebar in your concrete.
Right? It's the same different. He's like, you're reinforcing it, right? I'm like, wow, our curriculum says 1/8 of an inch is the maximum you can have, right? You're telling me 3 inches, right? So again, it's you're not really comparing apples to apples.
If it works, it works though.
World.
Yeah.
But you look at some of the stuff they do. I mean, they do they can produce high-end stuff.
Yeah.
You look at Kindig Shop, if you've ever seen his show, Bitch and Rides.
No, I don't think I've ever seen that one.
No, you have to check it out. He builds really high-end stuff, but he does the work. He's got a metal shop. He's got a body side. So the metal work is done. I mean, he's got a sheet metal tech on salary. So they're building all those panels. They're doing that metal work. The prep is everything in it, right? Get the base of it ready, and the rest of it's minimal after that, right?
Oh man, I feel like just my head's still spinning from just realizing that all that stuff's non-compulsory. Like I'm thinking like, man, I wonder how they do like the pay scales and stuff, because I feel like so much of that in Canada is based off of what kind of schooling you have. So much of the pay is based off that, and if you don't have that, you kind of got to go in and prove your shit. Like come in for 3 months and then we'll tell you what we're gonna pay. I have no idea coming in fresh. Like you can tell me you know what you're doing, but if there's nothing to back that up, fuck. Yeah. I think I'm hot shit when I can build an IKEA fucking shelf without looking at the instructions. These guys are fucking building cars without schooling.
Right.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's wild. Man,
it's a different world down there. Yeah.
I bet.
Well, and even so I referenced that one student of mine who went down there on that show. I mean, she was leaned on hard to do training down there because they said, holy shit, how do you know how to do all this stuff? Like, we don't know how to do this, right? She would be teaching people how to do things that is part of our curriculum here. And she's just like, wow. It's a different beast down here.
I wonder if there would be a market for American students that are doing that to come up to Canada, because a course load at NAIT, usually it's not like a year long. Usually you come for a year of school, you'd get it done in how many months typically for like a just heavy duty? It's what, 3 months at a crack that you come up for?
Yes. Yeah.
So like
2 months actually.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be unheard of if you came up and,
Oh,
got an
no.
apartment and did it. Do you guys ever
Nope.
see, is there lots of out of country at NAIT?
International, yes.
International, that's what I was going for.
Out of the US, I don't ever recall seeing anybody out of the States, but lots of international.
Huh.
Lots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We see lots of
know what's
people
up here.
I guess, well, again, they all think we live in igloos.
No
like
shit.
It's crazy. Next time you're down in Vegas, you talk to people there and they literally, you talk to your taxi driver even, they're like, well, how do you live in all that snow year round, right? And,
oh man. Yeah, we're good at shoveling. We know how to go.
We're good at shoveling. Yeah. Got the dog sled team pulling us around everywhere. So we're good.
Exactly. Oh, that's funny. And then another thing I'm curious about, just because there is that relationship with the teachers and the students so much, trade school, just from what we've been talking about, you've probably got to see over the years, the generations of kids come through, and you also get, a classroom could have a wide range of ages, but you probably get to see a good chunk of, young kids come through. What have you noticed over the last 15 years of like the change in the generations of just what you've seen, like in work ethic and attitude and that kind of thing? Because I feel like just me, not even having such a direct experience, you can see a very noticeable difference every couple of years. It's kind of a different flavor to the kids that are coming out.
Sure.
You probably get a direct view of it. What have you gleaned from that process?
Well, it's interesting. I think back, probably the most diverse class I had, I remember having a 17-year-old student and I had a 51-year-old student in the same class.
Oh, man.
So, you had somebody that could be one of my kids, and you had somebody that, quite honestly, could be not a dad, but an uncle to me for sure, right?
Yeah, no shit.
Or, you're kind of directing them, right? So, the older generation, they were more of a, head down, ass up, let's get this done. Tell me what I need to do. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, and I can take that.
Yeah.
And I feel like as the generations have progressed, we've gone very digital and very soft. Where you have to be you really have to run it through your head. So instead of saying, you know what, Nick, here's what you did, and I'm going to critique what you did because that's my job. You have to be very delicate, because some of them are extremely delicate, where if you use the wrong word or you came across in a different tone, they can file a grievance against you. It's crazy how soft as a whole that they become.
Yeah.
The other challenge that we have is they're coming in as they're already YouTube educated.
Right. I think they know
they're
everything.
Coming in going, I already got this. I watched it on YouTube. So one of I loved this one exercise I used to do. It was flipping the classroom. So I'd pick a topic I was teaching. I'd come in and I tell my students, I'm like, tonight, here's your homework. Here's what we're covering tomorrow. I want you to read your, we have a resource tool called an ILM. So it's an individual learning module, which is essentially the Coles Notes version of a textbook.
Yeah.
So we'd say, here's what we're covering tomorrow. Tonight, study that ILM. I also want you to look up these YouTube videos or whatever video. It doesn't have to be YouTube, but come in tomorrow with some knowledge. And I'd split them into groups and say, you look up this, you look up that. We'd come in the next day and guys would go, oh, this is easy. I got this one figured out.
Yeah.
So I'd go, we'd watch the videos, we'd walk through it, and then I'd teach my lesson and say, what do you see different that I'm teaching you versus what you just saw online? Right? And I mean, some of it, everybody, largely everybody, those student groups would really look at everything you see online has to be the gospel truth.
Right.
It's like, no, just because some clown did that on there, you can't do that. Like, no, this is not a right.
There's a right way to do things. Yeah.
Right. So then we take them down that factory repair side and say, here's the actual repair from the OEM.
Right.
This is what it looks like. This is what you need to follow. And here's the reality is your journeyman ticket's on the line for that. So if you want to fix it with the YouTube method of aluminum tape and spray foam, you're probably not going to be in the trade for too long. So enjoy your ride while it lasts. Right.
Yeah. And
so it's mind blowing to them. And it was an eye opener to them, but that's probably the biggest difference I noticed was they're very much, they see it online and they just believe it.
And it's probably hard to do this, but you have to instill in them the understanding of there's time for shortcuts, and you're going to find what shortcuts are doable and not doable. You need to learn that right way first. So then you have the understanding of the core, the building blocks. So then you can find where the shortcuts you can take that's going to be catastrophic if it goes wrong, or something where it's not that big a deal and you can take those shortcuts. But a lot of people want to jump right, a lot of times, like you say, with how digital and soft things are getting, the easy way out is what everybody's looking for. There's always an easier way. There's always a shortcut.
Always easy. Yeah.
And it's not to say that those shortcuts aren't good, but It's a skill to learn when the application of shortcuts is a skill in its own, right? And to try and teach that to kids. But I feel like probably if you come into it with that attitude of I know everything, right? I was just talking about the podcast I did yesterday about that white belt mentality, right? That always being a student. It doesn't matter if you've been in something for 40 years. If you keep that mentality of being a student, that's very important. I bet you that's probably one of the hardest things to get people to turn. That's one of those ones where going back to what we said earlier, that experiential knowledge versus vocabulary. You can tell somebody that and that, instill them, that white belt, but until they actually go through an experience where they realize the benefit of it, it's not really going to sink in. They might tell you they got it, but really you can tell, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a generational difference too. I see where,
for sure.
The older generations, I mean, they're, like you said, they're that white belt that's always learning. They're always expanding. They're always learning. They're always humbled enough to say, hey, you know what? I'm really good at what I do, but I also know there's always things changing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people coming into this go, I watched everything. I'm good. I'm at the top of my game. It's like, yeah, you are right now, but that changes every few months, right?
Yeah. And then look at like a couple of years ago, actually probably quite a few years ago now, when Ford started going to aluminum on their trucks, like that was a huge change in the industry. How did you guys handle that? Did you guys have kind of a heads up that was coming, or were you kind of adapting on the fly?
Yeah, what's interesting is we work very closely with Ford of Canada. All of the OEMs actually work very closely with NAIT, so they want us to be aware of that technology prior to it.
You would think so, yeah.
So we actually have a lot of prototype vehicles that are on our campus that have never even been released.
Do you guys have any Broncos?
They'll build something. Any which?
Any Broncos?
No Broncos, unfortunately.
No,
I like those too. I'm pretty happy to see that come out again. But it's cool because they'll give you an item. So what they do is they'll usually do their factory training takes place on our campus. Yeah. With a lot of the OEMs, and then they just leave you that car when they're done. So they'll say, hey, we're going to train on, here's a brand new model that just came out. And then they leave it there. So it's pretty cool stuff. So when we caught wind of this, Ford of Canada came to us and said, hey, we want to figure out how we can work on this together. So Ford came up with a really interesting angle when those trucks were first built. That was a game changer for our industry. So even something as simple as galvanic corrosion or cross-contamination between metal and aluminum was really, truly foreign to a lot of people. So when Ford started talking about it.
And maybe could you just explain what that is to people? Because I bet you there's people listening that have no idea what the big deal about using aluminum versus steel would be.
Sure. So so the cross-contamination, galvanic corrosion is essentially the breakdown of the softer metal. So it doesn't matter which metals you choose. One of them will be softer and it will corrode.
Right.
So aluminum does rust. A lot of people aren't aware of that either. So metal will rust and aluminum will rust. So if you put metal and aluminum side by side, for example, and they're touching, aluminum is the softer of those metals. It will corrode and it will break down over time. So Ford came up with some really cutting edge, innovative techniques that quite honestly are used. They set the standard for today's vehicles. They truly did. Yeah. I was very impressed. So when we started working with them, we had their collision manager for Canada came and met with me, and he starts telling me about these aluminum trucks, and I'm not going to lie, Nick, I judged as well when I'm
I think everybody that had ever been in Northern Alberta was like, are you guys sure about this? Like, I'll trust you, buddy.
Anybody that's been through oil field, I'm like, people here in Alberta are hard on trucks. Like, I don't know if you knew that, but when you tell these people that, and the guy goes, it was interesting. The very first time I met him, sat down, and he's talking about he wanted us to be one of the possibility of being a training center for them, because part of Ford's plan was when they rolled this out was you had to become Ford certified. Right. So the dealerships had to take training. They were trying to figure out, did they build their own training entity within Ford and go to each dealership and train, or did they have somebody like NAIT and SAIT and say, look, we'll teach your staff that curriculum. You guys can now teach all of Alberta. And you give them the accreditation they deserve or don't deserve, right? So in these conversations, I asked the guy, I said, he's giving me this presentation and we're using military grade aluminum, all these things, and that was part of their ad campaign as well. So we saw all the ads before they actually even came out. Right. So it was pretty neat, right? And I said to the guy, I said, so I'm going to call your bluff here. I said, what's military grade aluminum? Yeah. He goes, I was waiting for you to ask that. And so he reaches in his briefcase, pulls out this metal coupon, he tosses it over to me. He goes, that's our aluminum. So you look at the aluminum, it's 3/16 of an inch thick. Yeah. So it's not an aluminum beer can like a lot of us assimilate aluminum to. We just go, it's going to be thin, it's going to crumple, it's going to dent. Yeah. No, the shit's thick. And he goes, I'll tell you what, he goes, I'll give you $50 if you can bend that in half right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? He goes, do it.
Yeah.
I start playing with this, and it's thick stuff. So they did their homework. Um, it was very cool. The technologies they used, when they looked at not the whole truck is not aluminum. So that's one of the misnomers out there as well. It's still got a steel frame. It's still got lots of steel structural components. It's got a skeleton, an exoskeleton, really, that's an ultra high strength steel. So it's a stronger steel than just a regular mild steel body. It has a huge amount of strength to it. The adhesives that were developed in conjunction with that to cross bond those metals.
Yeah, because that's what I was curious about. Like, how do they attach it without that corrosion?
It was crazy. Yeah, and even the rivets. So if you look at the vehicles, they use a self-piercing rivet. So it's a smooth-headed rivet that goes in there. If you've ever put in a rivet, a normal blind rivet, it'll leave a hole. These don't. These go in there. It almost looks like the bottom of a 22 shell.
Oh.
So if you look at Ingo's truck, even he was over here the other day. I know he's got one.
Yeah.
If you put his tailgate down, if you look down by the hinges where it pivots, you'll actually see two little spots. It looks like the bottom of a 22 shell. That's a self-piercing rivet. Those are rivets. So the rivets are actually enterically coated. So even when they pierce that metal, they're still coated, so they're protecting and they're not cross-contaminating anything.
Cool.
So little stuff where you look at it and you're like, okay, it's $15 for a rivet. Now I see why.
Yeah.
Right? And the adhesives that you're using, you're bonding two different metals. Now when you look at, and not now, I mean, BMW started this stuff. BMW has been doing this for 20 years. So when you look at BMW, you look at their front structure, it's all glued and riveted together, and it's an aluminum substructure basically riveted to a steel unibody that goes around the passenger compartment. So it's very cool technology.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all adhesively driven, right? So cool technology. When I got to give Ford credit when they came out with it. And actually, when we were at SEMA, they had one of the trucks cut away on display there, and you show the inner structure of it. And anybody that's worked on them, they're actually a very, very well built vehicle. Yeah, I give them a huge amount of credit. Their engineering, second to none.
Yeah, I bet. So then, was there a whole new accreditation that needed to be given out for that? Is that the way they went to have someone that's certified to work on those aluminum body trucks?
They did. So they ended up forming their own training entity within Ford. So Ford has their own training. I came from a Ford dealer, so we used to do training at the dealership. So you had to be a Ford tech to get that training. So it's factory training. Yeah. They ended up going that option with it. So they would certify that whole dealership. They would tell you the equipment you have to have in order to become certified to get those vehicles in there. Right. I don't know if there's a Ford dealership out there now across Canada that doesn't have that accreditation. Right.
You pretty much have to have it if you're going to.
You have to have it, right? Yeah. And essentially, it's a standalone bay. So when you're working on aluminum, it's an entirely set of tools that is dedicated to that
was
truck.
Going to be my next question, because I had heard that you're going to need. That was the big thing when I first heard that coming out. I was like, oh man, you're going to need a whole separate set of tools, and that was all news to me. This whole corrosion thing was the first time I'd ever really heard of that problem. But I was thinking, man, that's going to be expensive for people to like. Oh yeah, our guys were thinking like to work on our Fords, are we going to need new tools and all this stuff? So,
yeah, if you're doing anything body wise, you're supposed to do it that way. Yeah, and interesting enough, I know you've got a strong heavy equipment link there in your world that you're working in. Yeah, that's actually really where it was driven from. When we talk about galvanic corrosion and all these things, you look at the heavy duty truck shops. They didn't give a shit if the truck was made out of fiberglass, aluminum, or steel. Yeah, same tools touched it, same tech touched it, same processes. Yeah. Then when you look at those trucks after they got 300,000 K on them and it's paint's bubbling and pieces are falling off, nobody really knew why, truthfully. Yeah. It's the engineering behind it where they came in and said, this is because you cross-contaminated that. When you painted that cab 10 years ago, you used that sandpaper on a hood and then you used it on a metal panel and now you've cross-contaminated it. So really you're building a standalone bay in your shop. It's supposed to have its own air makeup unit as well, supposed to be curtain divided from the rest of the shop. Your own tools, your own frame equipment, your own welder, even just the vacuum. If you get a vacuum that can actually suck up aluminum particles, it has to be an intrinsically safe vacuum, internally protected, because aluminum will actually create static.
Wow.
So you can't use a standard vacuum even. So every aspect. If I'm cutting off a panel and I want to vacuum up my mess, I can't use a normal vacuum.
So if the boys in my shop are cutting aluminum and they got shavings and they vacuum it up, I mean, we usually sweep everything, but if they did, they probably shouldn't be doing that then. I mean, with
probably
work on fuel.
No. Yeah.
Fuck, I might have to talk to our safety guy tomorrow and have a conversation on Monday and see if we might need to put a new policy in place. See, I'm learning new stuff here too.
The good news is a vacuum is only $1,600 because we have
fair
one.
Enough. Yeah.
It's crazy, right? I mean, But it depends on what you're cutting too. I mean, I'm talking excessive amounts.
For sure.
You guys aren't doing body work that I'm aware of in your shops.
Not really.
So the little bit that you're touching on it, I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But a lot of those repairs, because it is an airborne piece, they want vacuum assist with everything on it, from sanding to grinding to cutting.
Right.
Welding, you need fume extraction, you need everything, right? So it was a game changer for us, because we now have aluminum welding as part of our curriculum now, which it never used to be years ago.
Right.
You know, and again, you go back to trying to think what year I worked in a Ford dealership. Would have been early
72.
90s. I worked in 72. Yeah, not quite.
You lined me up for that one. You lined me up for that.
Yeah,
one.
I know. Door was there. I had to. Yeah. When the aluminum hoods, so Ford was using aluminum hoods.
Right.
You know how much training we had on that? None.
Nada. Yeah.
They had the new F-150s came out. I think that was like 1992 maybe, when that new style aluminum truck came out, or new style truck came out, had an aluminum hood on it. We had no idea.
Yeah.
We had no idea. You'd get them in there, you'd see a hood that had a dent on it. You go to straighten it and it would crack, and you're like, oh, what the fuck? Yeah. It wasn't until you changed a few of them and you realize this thing only weighs like, half a pound.
Yeah.
That's when you were connecting the dots going, okay, this isn't steel. So back in that time, we used to actually hire welders to come in. If we had a cracked panel, we used to have welders that would come in, they'd back their truck in the shop, they'd take it up for you, drive away.
Yeah.
You'd finish it, dress it, and everything else. But again, we were using one set of tools.
Yeah, exactly.
So any of the shops that are aluminum certified now have gone through an extensive amount of training. They've done an extensive amount of tooling. It's a big investment.
It is. It definitely is. Yeah, and that's a big risk, right? Like Ford diving into it as deeply as they did. That was a big risk for them to take, because of all these things we talk about that you have to take on. Not just the training, not just the understanding, but the tools and the know-how, right? And then passing that on, because you have guys coming in. If that's a whole different world. Yeah, that is
the other thing that's not really common knowledge out there too. When we talked about, when these advancements come out, when Ford announced the F-150, Dodge and GM also had an aluminum truck waiting to launch. They had them built, so we already saw those prototypes. We knew they were there, and it was really interesting. So they had a Sonoma truck that was their mid-size, and they had the Dakota that they built, and they were full aluminum truck, exactly the same as Ford. Both of those OEMs pulled back and said, Let's let Ford run with this. Let's let them hit the brick wall, and then we'll learn from what they did wrong, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Ford's had infinite success with it ever since.
So are you starting to see that come back? Are they pulling those kind of out of the back shop and starting to put them back into production, or what?
Those particular ones, no, but you're seeing a lot more now. So the Bronco that you talked about as well, the Bronco's an aluminum body.
Oh. It looks like, you can almost,
you look at Tesla, there's a number of them, BMW, Jag, Mercedes, they've all got aluminum body cars. So it is pretty common out there. It's not, certainly nothing scary. It's just knowing what to do with it, right?
Yeah. Hearing you bring up Tesla, actually, yesterday the guy I had on the podcast, this episode, it'll probably already be released when this episode comes out, but I had a guy on just to talk about electric vehicles, and that's kind of what he's into, and also autonomous vehicles, and we had quite the talk on Tesla and what that is. How much of that autonomous driving and EV market is coming into the trade schools up this way, or is that kind of something that's specialized and not kind of in your guys' domain yet?
What's interesting is again, when we talked earlier in this episode about the apprenticeship board driving our curriculum, right now they're looking at it saying this isn't hitting Alberta anytime soon.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there are pilot projects taking place. We're part of those pilot projects. We're working with the manufacturers as well. There's a big project. The city of St. Albert, for example, bought hybrid buses. 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They approached 3 years ago. They approached NAIT and said, hey, we got these hybrid buses that are fully electric. We don't know anything about them. We bought these things. Our techs have no idea how to fix them. Can you help us? So those are those relationships where we're really building that one-off training, trying to figure it out. But there's a lot of plans right now. EPCOR is a big part of this one, where they want to build a infrastructure between Calgary and Edmonton to test autonomous vehicles. Nobody really knows what it's about, to be perfectly honest. And what's really cool about this is the heavy equipment world is really leading this way.
It is.
Everybody talks about the electric cars, the autonomous cars. These are functioning up in Fort McMurray right now, the autonomous dump trucks.
Yep. And for a while too.
For a while. This isn't like just happened yesterday. This has been out there for a while. And these are the big earth movers that have the 12-foot high tires on them. These things are huge, like the monster units that they have up there. they're huge and they're running fully autonomous. And it's interesting, when they got those from the manufacturer, the local people didn't even know what to do to support that.
Yeah.
So they said, well, let's be logical. Let's get a heavy duty mechanic on the shift. We'll get a computer technician, and we'll get an electrician. Because that really covers the entire gamut of what this vehicle is. So the electrician comes in because there's sensors in the pathway. That's what's guiding this vehicle. The computer programmer is what's telling it to talk to that vehicle or how it talks to that vehicle. And the heavy duty tech obviously does everything else in between. So, and that's actually worked really, really well. Those are all really complementary trades where they really need each other, because let's just say this thing goes off course. Well, is it an electrical issue? Is it a computer issue? Or is it a mechanical issue? Right? It's really one of those three, and that's really where it's going. So it's taking place more and more in the heavy equipment side, especially on the mining portion. We're talking to some of these big, huge, giant companies that are out there that are building that equipment, and they're saying the autonomous route, there's no downtime. You're in this service industry as well. I mean, people are your number one risk that's out there. 100%. If you had a truck that could drive and fuel up tanks and all that, and it didn't have to stop, where's your downside? Yes, there's an initial investment, but you have no downtime other than equipment breakdowns, right? Whereas, as you know, with staff, there's limitations on how much they can drive, how much they can work, everything else. So there's the human risk in there too, right?
Error. Yeah. Oh man, we know it well.
We know, right? Yeah. So it's I don't know when we're going to see that. It's interesting. I mean,
it is interesting. And then also with those big earth movers and stuff, you see autonomous fueling, where you have a fuel tank that has an arm on it that will, this autonomous truck pulls up, and then this autonomous arm goes, hooks up to it and fuels the thing up, and then it keeps on going. So now you've taken a whole nother thing out of it, right? Like, and this is just something I've just seen a couple times. Somebody showed me it just because I'm in the fuel industry. Yeah, but it's pretty cool. And then another area that I didn't know that I didn't even think about. Then halfway through what you were saying there, agriculture too, like combines have been, there's usually still a guy sitting in it, but he's not driving nothing. He's just sitting there making sure nothing goes wrong, because usually everything's
bang on.
All the passive
GPS.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. My dad told me that I think like last year. I didn't realize we're watching some TV show and he said, they don't drive those. Haven't been driving them for a while. It's all GPS.
No. Yep. I learned that. You know what? I used to have a Snap-on business years ago. Yeah. Prior to NAIT, when I was dealing with the ag shops, I used to look after Westlock, Barhead. All the agriculture hotspots, right? Yeah. And they were showing me this technology, and like you, my mind was blown. I'd look at a combine and I'm like, how is that freaking thing $500,000? Yeah. Then they tell you, come sit in the cab of this thing, and you look at it and you're
in a spaceship.
Cab. It's like a cockpit. You're like, holy frick, I had no idea. Yeah. And they're like, our yield is higher because, we have no dead spots. We track this exactly. We look at year to year. It records everything, right? Yeah. It's very impressive technology that's in there.
People think farmers are dumb, and it's like, you probably haven't checked in. You probably got some outdated ideas in your head.
Yeah. And you know what? The guys that are stuck in 1970 and have that antiquated equipment, they're making bare minimum out there. They're just barely surviving. They're the ones that most people hear from, because they're the ones that are vocal. The guys that are successful out there typically aren't the ones that are chattering.
And that's why you're seeing, around here, the size of farms over the last 40 years has changed drastically, right? The size of these farms, like we go to fuel up tanks at guys' farms, and, as far as the eye can see, it's like they own half of Alberta, where does your farm fucking stop? Like, you go over that hill, and it keeps going and over that hill and over that. And it's like, holy shit, these guys. But that's what you do. You get the technology, and then you have economies of scale, and you take advantage of that. And just like the other business, what you see, it's not any different in the farming industry, which is unfortunate for the mom and pops of it that are doing it for the love of the game, and it really is tough to compete with that, which is unfortunate. But it's hard to stand in the way of innovation.
Well, and innovation drives our world, right? I mean, that's where we're at today. I mean, you look at farming. I can remember 12, 13 years ago when waterborne paint systems came into auto body.
And what is that? Sorry.
So waterborne paint is a VOC, or environmentally friendly paints. I say that very loosely, by the way. Yeah. So when I say waterborne, it's not your waterborne enamel that you'll go to Home Depot and get. Right. Because you get a lot of questions around that. It's still a solvent base, but it's not as harmful to the environment. Okay. But what's interesting about that is your spray technique, your paint booth, everything changes with it. So when that got implemented, it was federally mandated that you had to use that in the industry. We went from, in the Edmonton area at that time, there was 500 and some shops, and it went down to like 200 shops almost overnight. Wow. Because you really went to those players and said, you know what, I know you've been doing this, Nick, for 30 years, but for you to get up to that waterborne capacity is going to cost you $100,000. Wow. A lot of these mom and pop shops said, we can't do that.
Let's fold her up. Yeah.
So yeah, it sucks, but you know
Yeah.
what? That scale of evolution is what's keeping that fresh, right?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. That's one of the things that we were talking about yesterday. At the very end of the conversation, I had to pee my pants, and we're about 3 hours in, so I had to cut it. But we were just getting into. He was asking me about what I thought about the carbon tax and stuff like that, right? And sometimes you see something that is, like you say, it's an innovation that probably needs to happen at some point, and it all comes down to how you roll it out and how many people are harmed, right? When you make a change like that needs to come, you need to get this new paint into the market. But now it's a very different, how you implement that can cause a lot of harm or be mitigated. And it all comes down to that and how well you roll these things out. And it's just, you just got to hope and pray that the people calling the shots, the people in government, and unfortunately we see a lot of times it's not the best people in those positions. And there's a lot of damage caused just because they don't fully think through these decisions that are impacting. They don't look at all the downstream effects of it. And
no, absolutely.
That all over. And, kind of something else I was curious about, kind of on the aluminum stuff and talking about Ford, bringing in these innovations that are, you need to do a lot of work just to keep up with them. And it seems like there's a big trend going on in everything, but a lot in automotive of making it so difficult to fix yourself that you have to bring it back to the dealership. How has that impacted over the last 15 years that you've seen in all these industries? How has that shift really impacted you guys? Because that's got to make it hard to teach.
It's interesting is we spend a lot of time and effort every year training our staff.
Right.
We're fortunate that we do a lot of the OEM training on our building. So on the campus, our staff can attend that training and they're up to date with the latest and greatest technologies.
Right.
What's challenging though is really when you look at it, it really is driven from a safety standpoint. So, the average person doesn't look at it that way. They say, oh, you know what, a common misnomer out there is people say, my check engine light came on, I got to drive over to the dealership, they charge me $150, they plug in a scanner and it fixes it.
Yeah.
No, that's not quite how it works. Yes, they charge you a diagnostic fee for it. Those techs and that dealership, I mean, you guys run a big scale operation. You understand what that investment is.
Right.
They're invested heavily.
Yeah,
you're buying tooling, you're paying
cheap.
staff. No, so you're buying a scan tool. You're paying to update it. You're paying to keep it current.
Yeah, that software is every couple months. That software bill is never cheap. No.
So it's part of doing business. So you have to have a cost recovery
for sure.
That's part of doing business, or you wouldn't be in business, right? And what it does is it really just gives you a direction down a path. So it'll give you a troubleshooting code, and then you got to follow that down a troubleshooting path. There's pros and cons to that. Yes, the days of people just, they needed a handful of tools. They could pop the hood, rebuild their carburetor, change their spark plugs. There was only a handful of things to go wrong. However, when you look at all the creature comforts in your vehicle today,
you're right.
Your vehicle has more technology in it than your homes do for the most part.
For sure.
Truthfully, when you look at it, it's got climate control, it's got heated 100%. Seats, cooled seats,
heated
steering wheel, where does it stop, right? All of that comes with a price, and you really want that trained tech in there from the safety standpoint. There's a lot of systems in there that don't cross over well. So if you're not trained on it, you're going to create a lot of damage.
Yeah.
The vehicle manufacturers came out with something called a CAN bus network many years ago. So it uses a very small electrical harness. It shoots different voltages down it. I'm really simplifying this, by the way.
Fair enough.
But what really was a game changer there, for example, was the people that put in the aftermarket remote starters. Everybody before, you could tap in, as long as you had a ground wire and a power wire, you could put in a remote start.
Right.
Where this CAN bus network gets different is I can turn on the key. I might test a wire and I check it and it's got 12 volts to it. That wire might feed 4 or 5 different circuits. So depending on the circuit demanding it, it feeds it differently. So all of a sudden people are putting in remote starters. They'd go to start the car and it would deploy the airbags.
Holy fuck.
True story. Oh,
holy shit. I never heard that.
Oh yeah, this is common. So this is why they really said, you know what? This needs to be a very professional industry. You have to be highly trained at it. You have to have the right tools because we don't want you cutting corners.
Yeah.
So that's really where that came from. That really went across all of the trades, not just automotive. I mean, automotive is one that certainly drives that force, but it's really, there's still a lot you can do as a driver. We've also, when we talk about the different generations out there, I will say as a whole, the generations that are out there now have become very complacent and comfortable with just going to the shop.
Yeah.
I'll refer to my neighbors as an example. I have neighbors that drive very nice vehicles. You think any of them swap their winter tires?
No.
Nope. They drive into the tire shop. They store their tires there.
Yeah.
They literally don't lift a finger. They drive in there. They pour a coffee. They wait in the waiting room, and 20 minutes later, their winter tires are on there. Their summer tires are washed and stored, and they come back there in April or May, get them installed again. They go to the dealer, same thing. It's drop off their keys and go, just do what you need to do, and off you go, right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of those preventative maintenances that are built into these vehicles now are truly safety factors, right? And these are things that, a common complaint I hear is people say, well, 20 years ago, we never flushed out brake fluid. That's a conspiracy, right?
Yeah. They're just trying to get our dollar.
No, you're right. Yeah. I mean, it's not a big dollar service, but we didn't know back then what the damage was by leaving that brake fluid alone. Nobody knew. So you learn as you evolve, right? And that's really where we're at, is the vehicles are getting smart enough now that you can go to Princess Auto and buy a code reader for $60 and be armed enough to be dangerous. You can pull codes out of your vehicle. You can't do anything to it. It's not going to get you very far if you don't have the next step of equipment.
And the next step of knowledge too. Yeah.
And the next step of knowledge, because a lot of them look at it and then they go to YouTube, which we already talked about. Yeah. It's not always right. So people will take that code, they punch it in and go, oh, that's a quick fix.
Yeah.
And off I go, right? And we've all done it, but it's certainly a game changer out there for that industry.
Yeah. And you see guys, they're not changing tires. They're not doing their own oil changes, right? Like,
no,
it's almost a dying art, just the standard oil change. Like who can't do it? Right. I mean, I probably shouldn't. I'll tell you a little story here. I mean, it's quite embarrassing. So I was working in the shop, and one of the owners, I won't name them, of Max Fuels at the time, was bringing in their pickup for a service, and it was a Toyota. And who gets the services, right? The easy jobs get thrown to this guy, right? And I had been working the shop for a couple of years at this point. I was pretty hot shit on myself a little bit, like, oh, whatever, it's just a service. Oh, I can do this, no problem. So I'm rolling under it, and I'm, got the air filter out. I, greased everything, rolled under it. I got the oil dropping and stuff, and then put it back in. And then I can't remember how it came to be, but my boss comes and he goes, Nick, you fucked up. And and that shop environment, we fucked with each other so much, you never knew what was real and what was not. So I thought he's fucking me, right? Like, no, you fucked up bad. I'm like, no, like, come on, what did I do? Like, you're bullshitting. This isn't real. And on those Toyotas, it was apparently something, the oil and like the diff fluid are right next to each other, right? And I had dropped the fucking diff fluid out of it or something.
Yep.
And he goes, man, I think you fucked up bad. I think, like, I just Googled it, and I don't think you can do this. That's a in-house service, and there's no Toyota dealership in fucking Slave. So we had to fucking load the fucking pickup on a fucking flatbed and haul it to end. I felt so fucking bad. Like, I was just coming in there hot shit. And do you think I heard the end of that ever? Still to this day. I still get bummed about that shit, right? One time you fuck up and get cocky and fuck.
Yeah, everybody remembers that.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say it's just easy to drop oil, because fuck, even if you've done it a couple times, you can still fuck it up. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, one of those. So I've kept you here for almost 2 hours. I got questions to keep you here all night, but how you doing? You getting to the end of it, or can I ask you?
Probably wrap it up in about 10 minutes if we can.
10-4. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Sure. Well, I definitely, and another one, big industry changer was when they brought diesel exhaust fluid into the market. That was a huge disruption on the heavy duty side. How much heads up did you guys, because that had happened in Europe first, and they kind of dealt with it, and then it got brought over here. But from an outsider's perspective with not much knowledge, it seemed like what really threw it for a loop was the cold weather we had, because those DEF systems, they don't work good any of the time, it seems, on the big trucks, but definitely once it hits those cold temperatures, it is just nightmares, right? And how did you guys handle that whole change?
Well, you know what? I wasn't working with the heavy equipment program at that time, but some of the staff that I'm working with now.
I'm sure you heard about it, yeah.
Oh, you heard about it. I mean, again, they're linked with the OEMs as well, so you know this stuff's coming. You hear about it. We had a lot of those systems in. So when we look at the heavy equipment world, we don't have a lot of trucks in there, but we have a lot of the chassis in there.
Right.
So we have engines that are on stands that are running. So they were playing with it. They were doing a bunch of different things. And again, it depends on where you're at in that spectrum of age.
Yeah.
I look at my seasoned techs or my instructors that are, they've been doing the teaching for 30 plus years. You can run the math yourself and figure out what their age category is. You get my instructors that have been teaching for 2 years. They love the shit. They believe in it. They wholeheartedly understand it.
Yeah.
So it's a broad spectrum. It really is, right? And again, it's kind of like it's like the electric vehicles. I'm looking forward to hearing that podcast that you just recorded.
Yeah, it was pretty.
I'm excited to hear that one, as a matter of fact. So everybody talks about electric vehicles and they're coming. It's going to take over the future. you and I aren't going to see that in our lifetimes. I'm confident of that. I'd put money on that right now.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while.
Especially
and it's largely because of our climate. If we lived in California and we're a fair weather state, okay, I fully agree. It is coming. It's here. There's charging stations everywhere, like we have Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
Here in Alberta, how many do we have, right? And the DEF is the same thing. It's you know, I don't know. I don't know where that's going to go. To be honest with you, it's some guys are very pro cutting it out. Other guys are saying no, you got to leave it in there.
Yeah.
Still, from what I'm hearing, it's still a very high theft item. The shit's expensive to fix and expensive to maintain. You know, we've got
and it's a nasty product.
It is, It's not a good product at all. You know, the heavy equipment side, all of our stuff is indoors. The automotive fleet that we have that we train on, we've got I think 77 or 78 vehicles within our training fleet.
Wow.
Some of them are diesels, obviously. We park those outside overnight. That shit's gone. It's stolen every time.
Oh, really?
Stolen? Oh, yeah. And we live right in the heart of downtown. I mean, we have our own peace officers on campus.
Yeah.
People come in, they crawl into the vehicle, and I'm talking, you know, when you go to replace that stuff the next day when it's missing, it's $7,000 or $8,000 worth of components.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not including the labor. It's huge money to fix it. So I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm at on that one. It's you know, I have family that run diesels and they cut all that stuff out of their systems.
Yeah.
They get way better mileage. They run better.
Yeah.
They
delete the fleet.
You know, it's delete, right?
Delete the
yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll finish out on probably a lot of people that are listening. If they hopped in on this topic, probably one of their favorite things to talk about. You mentioned you worked for Snap-on for a bit, and that is something going into work in the shop. That was something I'd seen Snap-on, I'd seen it on tools, but I didn't realize all the culture that went around Snap-on and how you know people are religious about their Snap-on and that. How is it to work in that culture? And were they a big part of promoting that? And is that what it built up, or was that just natural over the years that people kind of got fanatical about it on their own?
You know, what's interesting is your no, they don't. They certainly don't teach that. But I will tell you from my experience being a franchise owner, one of the prerequisites to owning a franchise is you have to believe in their product. Yeah. So if I have a toolbox full of Mac tools, I'm probably never going to become a Snap-on dealer. For sure. You know, I truly happened on that upon accident. I worked in a body shop. I started working in a body shop when I was 16, and the only tool rep we had was Snap-on. We never had Mac tools. We never had there was a number, you know, her brand was out there for a while. There was a bunch of different sideline ones that were out there. We never had that in the shops I worked in. Right. So Snap-on became that brand that you got to know. And, you know, as a young apprentice, you'd look at it and you go, holy frick, like a set of wrenches from you is $500.
I know. That was me the first time I stepped on that truck.
That's nuts. I can't believe it. Right. But as you use that over and over as an experienced tech, there's a huge difference. There's a difference in the feel. There's a difference in the quality. I'm a big believer that the tool and the return policy. Oh, huge. Warranty. You buy it once, you're buying it, right? What's interesting about that too is I really believe that the tools will make you a better product in the end. So you can be a fantastic tech, but if you're using shitty tools, you're not going to produce a high-end result. Yeah. That's just the reality. I mean, for sure, wrenches are wrenches. I get that, but it's how they feel. If you're using them all day long versus, you know, you're that home handyman that's using them once every month. Yeah. Totally different deal. But if you're using them all day long every day, they're worth their money, right? Yeah. You know, and same with toolboxes. You know, when I got into the industry, I'm an opportunity seeker. So I got into that, and I again, the first franchise I bought, I owned two. The first one I bought was Westlock Barhead, which is strong ag community. I looked out there and I looked at where my best value was, my best dollars for profit. That was in toolboxes. Yeah. So I looked at it and I thought, why am I going to make my most bang for my buck? I can sell 1,000 different screwdriver sets. I'm only making a small margin. If I sell a toolbox, that's where my margins are. Yeah. So I really started looking at that seriously, and it's interesting. Again, it took about 2 years to really build up the speed to it. I actually sold the most toolboxes in Canada. Wow. That year. I looked at that. Do you remember how many it was? You know, I don't remember the numbers, but it was huge. Like, because I used to do these, there was an annual, no, they're not cheap. No. But I approached that because, you know, I believed in the toolboxes wholeheartedly. I was in a shop that got broken into. Yeah. Mine was the only toolbox that never had anything taken because they couldn't get into the cocksucker. They're like right? 4 blocks. Yeah. So I used to always tell guys, you know, I'd started off and I'd always look at it and say, you know, when I was new in sales, I came from working on the bench. I was in the auto body to trying to sell somebody something. And I'd come into a seasoned tech that's been doing this 10 years and they go, frick, I'm not buying a $10,000 toolbox. That's nuts. Right. I came into it with a whole different approach, and I'd say, you know what, how much do you have invested in your tools? And of course, I do homework because when you buy a franchise, it comes with historical data.
Yeah,
I'd come in there, and I'm not shitting you. There were some guys that had over 200 grand
for sure,
tools.
easily. That's.
I'd say, okay, here's what you've spent in tools in the time you've been buying from this franchise.
Yeah.
They'd go, yeah. I'd say, okay, so you spent $20,000. So if I give you $20,000 today, are you going to put it in a tin box, or are you going to put it in a safe?
Yeah.
Well, you put it in the safe.
Of course.
Well, then why do you have a Princess Auto toolbox?
Exactly.
Right. And I started this whole program within my area where I offered really good trade-in incentives, because I had a ton of apprentices that they loved the product, but they couldn't afford it. They'd be like, you know what, one day I want to own that. Right.
Yeah.
But right now I can't do that. So I'd offer them trade-ins. And then I'd also tell people, I'd say, you know what, if you buy another box from me, I'll give you a guaranteed trade-in value. I'll give you your money back on your toolbox, provided you take care of it, don't cover it in paint and, destroy it and everything. And it was phenomenal, the success I had. It again, it took a couple years to get it going.
For sure, just like anything.
The amount of people that came back, phenomenal. And so that culture is already embedded. And because I was already a believer in those toolboxes, I could sell that day long, right? And if you look at my garage now, you have to come over here to see it to really appreciate it. But I can put together IKEA furniture in record time because I've got every freaking tool known to man. And it wasn't from Snap-on; it was from my years in the auto body side. But when I brought all those tools home, I just kept them. I mean, you spend a lifetime building that set, right? So. Yeah, I bleed Snap-on when I get cut for sure. It's it goes hard and deep, and I've actually brought that culture into the trade school as well.
Yeah,
my predecessors, some of them weren't from the trades; they were just business people.
Yeah,
they didn't know a Princess Auto wrench from a Snap-on, so they would look at the value and say, "We got to buy 50 sets of wrenches. Let's get at $500 a piece, or we can go to Princess Auto and they're $50 a piece." Right? So I begin this culture of changing everything out, and it's pretty cool when you see the apprentices come in and go, holy shit, everything in here is Snap-on.
Yeah.
Like when you look in a tool crib, when we've got $1 million of hand tools in that tool crib, they're working with, they're looking at it going, this is pretty cool. Cause you're putting that in their hands. Right. And I mean, obviously that was one of my spin-off partnerships I formed was partnering with Snap-on. Yeah. I had some inside edge there already. Went to them and said, look, we want to put your product in students' hands. And what do you want to do?
And that's paid back to them a million times over already, I'm sure, because you get somebody that, like we talked about right at the start of the Snap-on conversation, is that difference in that feel of what these tools are doing. You can feel that quality immediately. And now you have, as you're learning, you feel that. And then you go back to your Mastercraft fucking wrenches and you're like, ooh, that is a lot different, right? Or impacts, right? And then now that's a huge incentive. As soon as they have the money, they're going to be investing in Snap-on, right? So I'm sure
they are.
For as much money as Snap-on probably puts into NAIT, I'm sure it pays back out tenfold. And then on the toolbox side, I was going to ask, I wonder if you saw this, because I definitely saw it in all the shops that I ever was a part of, is you make one sale of a nice toolbox in a shop. Sure as shit, a couple months later, you were going to see a lot
everywhere. Yep.
One, I think when I moved to GP, I think one guy had just gotten a nice Snap-on or Mac box in Slave. And then you go back a couple months later, man, did everybody in here get a new toolbox? Just, bright white and bright green and all the colors they have now, and all the accessories. Man, you want to talk about being more technology in your truck than in your house? Fuck, there's almost more technology in a fucking toolbox than in a house these days.
It's wild.
I went back in the shop and was talking to all my old buddies that worked. I'm like, what is all that? Like, can you explain this fucking toolbox to me? Because it's not like they used to be in my day. Like, holy shit, it's only been a couple years.
You now plug your toolbox in. It's got USB chargers built in. It charges all your cord. Like, it's crazy.
Wild.
Right? Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It is that culture where you get one in there, and that's all it takes is we used to joke and say it was the infection. You sell one in the shop, I guarantee you within a month, I'm selling a few more, right? Yeah. The coolest thing we had back then was Snap-on really supported this, and they said, you know what, we have a toolbox truck. They had a 28-foot box on it as a Freightliner chassis. Yeah. 28-foot box. They said, we'll load it with whatever toolboxes you want. We'll ship it out to, you tell us where you want to book it. Yeah. So I booked this truck for a month solid. I said, freaking giddy up. Let's do this.
Yeah, right? Let's get it.
Their warehouse was in Calgary. So when I met with their driver, I remember the first time meeting him, his name was Johnny. And Johnny and I really clicked, right? And I said, Johnny, you're going to hate me because you're going to be driving back to Calgary every single night. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm selling out your truck every day.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, okay, brother.
Yeah.
Right. So we did this thing, and I'm not shitting you. It was like he would leave Barhead at 3:00 in the afternoon. He's like, I'm fucking empty. I got to drive back to Calgary and grab another set of boxes for tomorrow morning. And he would go back to Calgary. He'd load up. He'd leave Calgary at 3:00 in the morning. He'd meet me, Westlock, have breakfast in the morning, and go. And it was crazy. And you'd pull into some of these ag dealerships, and it was very cool because you got to know the owners quite well, and they would take care of you. They'd say, you know what, when you pull in, hit the horn, because I had a fairly large truck out then too, right? So I had the air horns, everything else, and they'd say, just toot the horns, and we'll open the drive-through bay. You can just pull inside because we know you're going to be here for a few hours, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You'd be inside, it'd be warm, and then it actually grew from there. I mean, they used to tell you, come through the car wash bay first, wash your truck, pull into the big main shop.
Oh, wow.
Shut it off, and you'd be sitting having lunch with guys. Like, you really built that rapport, right?
And that's kind of what the way Snap-on and a lot of these trucks now, that's their business market, is creating that relationship, right? Like I knew the Snap-on guy and the Mac guy and the Matco guy, but the Snap-on guy specifically in Slave, right? Like, Doc,
that was Jack.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a good man, and you know him, and you build that
Great
relationship.
guy.
So you're not just, it's an expensive tool, but you're buying it from somebody, you have that relationship, and that goes so much further. It's not like just walking into Walmart and you're giving it to some faceless corporation here. No, it's actually going to somebody, and they're selling you on the stuff, and they always have the little things, each truck had a different gimmick. One guy would give you a free bag of chips and a pop if you bought something off him. Some guy, he'd give you a deal on knives. Every truck always had a nice set of knives too, just to get it. Because everybody needs. I was the biggest fucking mark in there. I bought so many knives off those trucks. I still got my whole toolbox. I have one drawer still full of knives just from all the.
That's funny. Yeah. And depending on your market share, everybody was different, right? I mean, mine was an ag environment. People love their pocket knives. I used to sell a ton of pocket knives out there, right?
Oh man.
But again, that came down to that relationship and that honesty where, I had talked to somebody and they'd be looking at something and I'd say, you're only going to use this once.
Yeah.
You don't need to spend the money on a Snap-on, buddy.
Exactly.
And that's what really paid dividends for me, where they'd look at it and go, really, you're talking me out of a sale? Yeah, because you're my friend. Like, I'm not out here just to make money. However, on the flip side of that, if you want to talk business really quick, it's the worst business model out there.
Oh, really?
When's the last time you went to Canadian Tire and told them what you're going to pay them for a set of wrenches and then said, we'll pay you that over the next 6 months?
Yeah, that's true.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
When you look at the business model behind it, we're charging the most dollars for that commodity, and we're letting you dictate your payment terms.
Yeah.
With no interest. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So somebody came to you and said, Nick, I need $1,000 worth of fuel. I'm going to give you $15 a month indefinitely.
Yeah.
And you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Win-win for me.
No shit.
I'm driving all the time. I've got all this fuel. It's horrible.
Yeah.
That's one of the downsides of that franchise, whereas they allow you to negotiate. So instead of just setting a price, you go into any retail outlet. As far as I know, nobody can go into your location and tell you how much they're going to pay you for fuel.
No, they try all the time.
Because if you can, I'm on my way over there tomorrow.
Exactly. Oh man,
hook me up. But it's crazy. But people would come in and say, "Yeah, you want $500 for that? I'll give you $300, but I'm not paying you today."
Yeah.
And how does that work?
No shit. Hey. And I guess I never really realized that because I have such a weird thing. I probably get this from Mingo. I hate owing anybody anything. I would so much rather wait until I can pay it. I hate owing anybody anything. It's a real thing that bugs me. So I never took advantage of that system. But I definitely, now that as soon as you mentioned, I thought of all the other guys in the shop. Oh yeah, they were all on those payment plans and they had it all. And then being in the fuel business, the AR side of it, of tracking this down of people, it is just
terrible.
One of the worst. It's one of the worst parts of the job. And then
agreed,
you're pretty much taking that on as one of the main points of it. But even with all that said, I bet you look back on those days on the Snap-on truck and you look on them pretty fondly. I bet. Hey.
Oh, I do. Yeah. I love it. It's pretty cool. I
wouldn't trade it for the
a
world.
lot of it is these relationships like you and I are having, where you really know people when you see them every week. You really follow them and their family, and you're like, oh, your wife just had the baby. How's everybody doing? Like, there's a strong personal connection. And actually, it's interesting is some of the staff I have now used to be my customers.
Oh yeah, I bet.
From some of those shops. So it's super cool when you start working with people and you're like, holy crap, I haven't seen you in 10 years, 15 years, right? And it's very, very cool. So it certainly has formed some of the relationships I have today.
Yeah, I bet.
Hands down.
Bet. Oh, yeah. Well, that's
no regrets there at all. I love it.
And I think that's probably the most beautiful spot we can leave it on right there.
Right.
Thanks for coming on. That was even better than I anticipated. I know it took us a while to line up the time, but next time hopefully this COVID stuff can fuck off a little bit and we'll get in front of each other. We can do it in person there in the city.
Maybe
love that. Come down and show me how to actually use some of these tools we talk about, and anything you want to plug, anything I would recommend people should go to the NAIT website and check out some of those videos. If you guys don't get a YouTube channel up and running here soon, that's the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I look forward to that. Look forward to doing this in person next time. And maybe we'll start with a tour of the campus first. I'll take you through all those spots. I'll take you through the culinary. I'll take you through the machine shop. And we'll tour through everything. And then we'll do a chat after that. And your head will be spinning.
Sounds awesome. And then that new campus that you guys are building, make sure you leave about 10,000 square feet for the podcast and YouTube star wing that I'm going to start there. So
it's open for donations. So donations get wings, right? So when you start donating money,
the VonDubCast wing. All right, I'll see.
Maybe I'll hit Ingo up for that one.
Yeah, no shit. Hey. Oh, well, thanks again, Scott. That was so much fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, you bet, buddy.
Awesome.
Have a good night.
Talk to you later.
All right. Hope you guys really enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed recording it. Scotty's quite the guy. Kind of a family friend that I met a couple of years ago, and he's always fun to hang out with. That trip down to the SEMA show that we talked about, I mean, we didn't get into too much of the stories, and probably for good reason, but man, did we have a good time. Never had a bad time talking to just one of those guys that is down to earth and always willing to lend a hand, and always has a well thought out position on everything you ask him about. It's a ton of fun to talk to those kind of people, and that's the exact type of guests I'm hoping to have on here more in the future. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really enjoyed it. Like I said at the start, if you can follow me on my social medias, that's a huge thing to help. If you could tell a friend, that helps. What is the other thing that helps? Oh yeah, if you want to come help out, just send me a message. Even if you have no idea how you could ever possibly help out with the podcast, just reach out. I have some ideas. You don't need any type of skill set or any type of hard knowledge of any podcast stuff to begin with. So, yeah. And then also, oh shit, I even forgot this in the intro. Guest ideas. Into the new year here, I got lots of people lined up that we're just kind of waiting through Christmas and stuff to get onto, but always looking for new guest ideas. If you think of someone that might be good, or also one of my big goals for this new year is to get on other podcasts as a guest. Maybe this is my ego talking, but I really think I'd be a really good guest on podcasts as well. I think I'm a good host, but I think I can really shine as in that guest role too. So if you see any podcasts, maybe Alberta podcasts or ones that are of a size that I could reach out and maybe get onto, or that you could reach out and say that, hey, I'd be a good guest on, that'd be huge in this new year. So other than that, thanks guys again for everything that helped me accomplish everything I did with this podcast over the years. It doesn't work without you guys, you listeners. And thanks for reaching out. If you have anything to add, anything that would make this podcast better, please reach out. That's my favorite thing. I'll discuss this with anybody. I've never not replied and had a good conversation with anybody that's ever reached out on this. And it's one of my favorite parts about doing this. So yeah, thank you guys. Be more episodes coming in the future, and I'll see you on the next one.